You and I are diving into a world where your own sister shoots an arrow straight through your heart." He thought his brother was saving him with a healing potion, but instead got a face full of burning acid. Seeing this absolute madness, his father stepped in right away to stop the siblings from killing him. But then, like it was nothing, he brutally beat the poor guy and broke his bones. Turns out, he reincarnated straight into the Demon King family, where the body's original owner was constantly tormented and bullied by his own siblings. One day, he cried to his mother for comfort, but she just told him a real demon learns to strike back with twice the power. The boy replied that if he ever did that, his siblings would just murder him on the spot. His mother just let out a cold laugh and told him to strike them first before they can. She even reminded him that his father became the Demon King by slaughtering his own 12 siblings. Now look at this, because she pulls a dagger from her back and drives it straight into his chest. She told him if someone tries to kill him, do this. Always be faster than your enemy. By the time our main character finally woke up, it was already the next morning. Overnight, he absorbed the memories of Kayla, the original owner. Checking his body, he realized his severe wounds from yesterday were almost fully healed. His maid warned him that he had overslept and that the family banquet was starting, so he needed to get up right now. Thanks to Kayla's memories, he realized she was actually his personal maid. Since the old Kayla was completely submissive to his siblings, everyone humiliated him and treated him like garbage. Even his own maid looked down on him, forcing him to dress himself every single morning. When he asked why other servants actually helped their masters, she mocked him, suggesting he should be the one dressing her. She even dumped all of her own daily chores onto Kayla to do for her. Meanwhile, Linlin just laid down on his bed to sleep. But our main character knew one thing. This ends today. After changing, he headed to the dining room, but as he sat down, Seldra, sitting right opposite, raised her leg with lethal intent. A hidden blade shot out from her boot, stabbing his calf and sending a wave of agonizing pain through his body. She just smirked, teasing that he looked completely drained and really needed to eat more. "I know what you're thinking. If they expose him, he is dead." He would end up dying the most painful, miserable death possible. So he just grit his teeth and started eating the food. But with the very first bite, a paralyzing jolt of electricity surged through his entire body. Seeing him suffer, Tom sneered and told him they made that soup especially for his weak self. Staring at the monster sitting right across from him, Kayla made a decision. These guys weren't family. They were literal demons. The truth was, this world was a game he knew inside out. In fact, he was the guy who designed it. So how could he let himself get trampled by basic demons inside a game he literally built? With that in mind, he slowly picked up his spoon and out of nowhere splashed the boiling soup right in Seldra's face. Right after he ripped the dagger out of his own leg and stabbed it straight into Tom's arm. His father, who was busy eating, froze completely solid after witnessing such insane, reckless behavior. Kayla immediately stood up, flipped the entire table over, and roared that if the food was trash, nobody was eating. That violent outburst left Seldra and Tom in absolute shock, and even his father stared at him in amazement. Walking out of there, Kayla had only one thought. It felt absolutely amazing to flip that table in their faces. His dad almost beat him to death for being insolent, but thanks to his insane demon regeneration, he recovered instantly. Watch closely, because this is the real power of the Demon King's son. Now Kayla wanted to test the absolute limits of his new strength, but then Linlin showed up to lazily order him to magic class. He stared straight at her and warned her in a freezing voice to never order him around again. Those cold, sharp words left the maid completely breathless. In the old Kayla's memories, that class was a living nightmare, giving his siblings the perfect chance to torture him endlessly. They were complete sadists, and though Kayla hoped his sister would protect him, he was dead wrong. She did the exact opposite, actively cheering them on to hit him with everything they had. The original Kayla wasn't weak, just soft. Stick with me to see him unleash his true power next time. All right, you and I are diving into this madness, which starts when the teacher announces Seldra and Tom are absent. Suddenly, the instructor asks who is scheduled to duel next, and a red-haired kid raises his hand, claiming it is his turn against Kayla. According to the Academy rules, today is their second official combat match. As they take their positions, the redhead Rod smirks, promising he will not beat Kayla to death. As soon as he finishes speaking, two laser-like daggers of light manifest in his hands. The surrounding students begin whispering that Kayla is probably getting another near-fatal beating today. Some even tease begging Rod not to make the young master cry, which only makes Rod's smirk turn way more sinister. In a way, the original Kayla's life mirrored his own before transmigrating, both of them rejected and relentlessly bullied by everyone. But there was a massive difference. The blood running through Kayla's veins belonged to the Demon King himself. When Kayla's aura erupts, Rod takes 2 steps back in terror, unable to comprehend this overwhelming destructive magic. Everyone around them watches in complete and utter disbelief. Rod tries to back away again, but Kayla's crushing pressure prevents him from taking a single step. Pay close attention here, because Kayla instantly teleports right in front of him, landing a brutal punch straight to his face. The devastating impact explodes with such raw force that a massive crater tears open right beneath Rod's body. It all happens so fast that nobody even sees the strike, leaving even the instructor completely stunned by what just happened. Rod is left sprawled on the ground, his face completely shattered and unrecognizable from that single crushing blow. Kayla leans down coldly, asking what the hell he just said and who taught him to speak to the Demon King's son like that. Feeling Kayla's terrifying, suffocating pressure, Rod begins desperately begging for mercy over and over again. Only then does Kayla stand up, staring with icy eyes, warning him that another provocation means a painful, miserable death. Seeing Kayla stand up, the rest of the class immediately backs away out of pure survival instinct. Walking toward the instructor, Kayla suddenly stops, turns his head, and calmly asks why they are not continuing with the lesson. Right behind him, Linlin stands there completely shell-shocked. You and I can see Kayla looks completely different now, while the Demon King watches everything unfold from the balcony. Meanwhile, back in the castle, Seldra and Tom are taking a medicinal bath to heal their severe wounds. Seldra roars in fury over that bastard throwing poison soup at her, while Tom advises her to focus on healing since they lack Kayla's insane regeneration. The more Seldra dwells on it, the more her absolute rage festers. It is honestly insane. Why does only Kayla possess such a legendary healing ability? Tom quietly mutters that something about their younger brother seems to have completely changed. When Kayla flipped the table this morning, Tom noticed something unprecedented. For the first time, he saw their cold father crack a small smile. Hearing this, Seldra's fury blazes even hotter, but Tom firmly insists that this entire situation is extremely abnormal. Seldra frowns, asking him what he is trying to say. Tom suggests a temporary alliance to take care of Kayla together, an idea that Seldra immediately agrees is absolutely brilliant. Soon the two reach an agreement before Kayla can gain any more of their father's favor. They resolve to eliminate him. Back in class, the teacher activates a projection introducing the ancient Demon King Tolk Carlton. He explains that Tolk was the absolute strongest warrior of his era, entirely unrivaled throughout the land. Unfortunately, he met his end due to a treacherous backstabbing conspiracy orchestrated by the Heaven Guild. Since then, those scoundrels have banded together inside the kingdom, establishing their most powerful faction as their base. Since the Heaven Guild represents the primary threat of their invasion, the instructor demands that all students train to their absolute limits to prepare for war. The class immediately roars in unison, shouting for the ultimate glory of all demonkind. Once class ends, Kayla sits atop the high castle wall, realizing he must find a way to escape soon if he remains trapped here. Unsure when those monsters will tire of playing with him, Kayla asks Linlin if his father is leaving in 3 days. Upon hearing her reply, Kayla notes that this massive fortress actually possesses a critical, well-hidden weakness. They currently lack a skilled map architect who can help them strategically utilize the surrounding battlefield terrain. And trust me, those scum from the guild will exploit every single blind spot to launch their deadly attack. So come along with me, and let's see how Kayla planned to map this entire region. With that map, his father could completely wipe out every single enemy, leaving absolutely nobody alive. But Kayla's first tiny goal was incredibly simple: escaping this castle. But when he handed it over, his father suddenly drove his hand straight through Kayla's chest, coldly demanding to know what a useless scrap of paper was supposed to prove. Enduring the agonizing pain, Kayla pushed through to explain that the castle's current layout put them at a massive disadvantage. If they could just reshape the battlefield according to his plan, they could completely turn the tables. Hearing those words, the Demon King finally locked his eyes onto the map Kayla was holding. After a heavy silence, he let go, demanding to know why he had built a secret workshop. Kayla admitted that if he had asked to help from the very beginning, his father would have immediately shut him down. So he chose to finish the map first. As the son of the legendary Demon King, his only goal was to help wipe out those pathetic guilds. With that, Kyla stared directly into his father's freezing gaze, silently waiting for his ultimate judgment. Now watch closely here, because Linlin was absolutely trembling in sheer terror, seeing him talk back to the Demon King. After an agonizingly tense silence, his father finally asked how much time he needed to finish it. Kyla froze, wondering if he had misheard, but his father repeated the question, asking how many days he needed for the new map. Quickly, Kyla raised his hand and showed him 5 fingers. His father warned that the Heavenly Guild would regroup in 3 days, making the map completely useless. Kyla coughed, clarifying he did not mean 5 days. He could finish it in just 5 hours. Hearing this, his father snapped his head around in absolute disbelief. Kyla raised the map, promising that the entire construction would be ready in the 3 days before the grand battle. Because of this, he begged him to let him run the entire operation. Before leaving, his father granted the request a faint smirk, tugging at the corner of his lips. But he also issued a chilling warning. If he failed, he would tear him and his map to pieces. The moment he left, Kyla finally breathed again. But the very next second, his internal organs burned with intense heat, causing him to cough up a pool of blood. Linlin stared at Kyla in shock, unable to believe he had actually managed to convince the Demon King himself. Forcing his head up, Kyla snapped at her to stop staring and help him get to the infirmary right away. After some quick bandages, Kyla rushed straight back to his workshop to draw. True to his word, he finished everything in just 5 hours. The Demon King's massive army immediately began a total reconstruction. Following Kyla's precise blueprints, the wizards placed illusion magic circles at key positions all around the active construction site. This guaranteed the enemies on the outside would have absolutely no clue what was happening inside their domain. Right then, Kyla felt the ultimate rush of mapping like in his gamer days. Now you and I didn't expect this next move, but over at the Heavenly Guild, their leader, Hermes, learned that the enemy was reshaping the entire terrain, sending a wave of shock across his face. A scout reported that the enemy had mobilized countless mages, using massive illusions to completely blindside their scouts. The soldier asked if they should strike immediately to halt the construction, but Hermes casually dismissed the idea. Those fools were moving far too late. In 3 days, Tuya would arrive with her most elite force, the Tarkin Squad. Tuya had spent decades training and sharpening this elite unit, and they were finally ready to unleash hell. Hermes was absolutely certain that 3 days of lazy prep work could never overcome a squad forged over decades. The legendary Demon King was destined to fall. Meanwhile, a massive army marched toward the castle, led by a commander on a wyvern rallying his troops to slay the Demon King. Hearing his war cry, the ground troops surged forward, pushing their pace even faster. Watching this, a red-haired woman sighed in awe, noting how incredible General Kilman's leadership truly was. Right then, a nervous young soldier approached his commander Slyers, asking if they would actually win this time. She laughed, promising him that victory was absolutely guaranteed. Their elite Tarkin squadron was nothing like those pathetic ordinary guilds. Meanwhile, back on his throne, the Demon King silently realized that Kyla's wild proposal was definitely not some simple trick. He knew the layout wasn't entirely perfect, but with his own body rapidly approaching its limit, he had no choice but to trust it. Tomorrow is the final showdown, and you and I will witness how this war ends. Get ready, because you and I are about to watch mages use their magic to build at breakneck speed. Below them, the trolls were relentlessly carving massive boulders into building materials that were ready for use. Everything was going perfectly according to Kayla's plan, proving to him that building this in reality was 1,000 times harder than in a video game. Here he could control and change so many things, giving him a level of freedom no video game could ever offer. Now all that was left was to wait patiently for the massive battle coming the very next day. The next day, when the Tarkin squad reached the front lines, the guild members rushed out to greet them with pure excitement. The leaders of both factions quickly held a meeting. Now pay attention, because after sharing intel, Hermes proposed a direct attack on the Demon King's castle, and Kilman completely agreed. But right as they were celebrating, a tiny black dot suddenly appeared in the middle of the field. Sensing danger, Kilman backed away instantly, and the very next second that black dot exploded with a deafening blast. Fortunately, Kilman's shield bearers reacted quickly, blocking the devastating force of the blast to protect him. As for Hermes, His subordinates also acted in time to shield him from the shockwave. Once the smoke cleared, a dark figure slowly stood up in front of them. Everyone stared in absolute shock, only to discover that the person standing there was none other than the Demon King Hell himself. But before any of this happened, Kayla had told his father that he had already destroyed the magic surveillance circles of the Heaven Guild. That way his father could use teleportation magic without the enemy ever realizing what was happening. When Kayla suggested teleporting right into the center of the Heaven Guild, his father actually seemed quite interested. But Seldra, standing nearby, tried to stop him, calling it complete madness. And Kayla quickly pretended to agree with her. Hearing that his father glared at them with freezing cold eyes, asking if they dared to doubt his absolute power. That question terrified them so much, they broke into a cold sweat, with Town only stuttering that his father hadn't fully recovered yet. But his father ordered them to shut up immediately, deciding to invade the enemy base and slaughter everyone from the inside. Back to the battlefield. I know what you're thinking. And yes, the Demon King Hell showed up to coldly declare that they would regret ever coming here. His overwhelming aura radiated in all directions, forcing the soldiers to back away without even realizing they were doing so. Kilman reacted faster than anyone, instantly commanding all of his troops to charge forward and attack. Over on Kayla's side, his army was prepared, opening the massive gates under his command to join the fierce clash. The guild deployed their frontline forces, and before long, the two powerful armies collided with everything they had. Since Kayla's side had launched a sudden surprise strike, they caught the enemy completely off guard. Seeing everything play out exactly as planned, Kayla let out a subtle, satisfied smile. Right at that moment, Seldra and Town climbed up the castle and appeared behind him, making Kayla instantly realize something was terribly wrong. Town chuckled, launching his long whip straight at Kayla, who had no time to dodge and was pierced through the lower abdomen. Even worse, the whip kept boring deeper, as if trying to rip him apart from the inside out to kill him. Seeing Kayla pinned down, Seldra unsheathed her massive sword and charged at him without a single second of hesitation. In the blink of an eye, her blade slashed down cleanly, taking Kayla's head right off. The two of them were convinced that no matter how insane Kayla's regeneration was, he was definitely dead this time. As his head flew through the air, his eyes flew wide open in utter disbelief. Watching his lifeless body plummet from the castle, they both got ready to go claim their reward from the Demon King. But right then, Seldra drew a hidden dagger and lunged straight for Town's throat. Fortunately, Town reacted just in time to dodge the lethal strike. Seldra laughed at his reaction and leaped backward to safety. Town stared at the dagger in absolute horror, shouting that it belonged to their mother, and they were strictly forbidden from using it. Seldra casually pointed out that they were demons, so nobody cared about such a stupid rule. If she got rid of Town too, she would be the sole heir. Hearing this, he grit his teeth so hard they nearly shattered. Instantly, Town launched himself off the ground and charged straight at Seldra with absolute fury. Seldra met his charge without taking a single step back, screaming that the moment Town was wounded by that dagger, his tragic fate was already sealed. In the blink of an eye, the two clashed brutally and began a ruthless fight to the death. And that's where we'll leave it with Kayla on the ground, watching them tear each other apart, before slowly closing his eyes. Suddenly, Linlin used her magic to melt the ground beneath him. Then she dragged Kayla aside and reattached his head to his body. Look closely, because right after doing this, Linlin was shaking in pure panic, totally exhausted. Meanwhile, out on the battlefield, the demons had already completely surrounded the guild forces from the rear. But as they charged, they realized the enemy was already waiting with weapons ready. The moment those demons appeared, the guild soldiers raised their weapons and launched an immediate counterattack. The demons did not care and charged with pure fury. As both sides clashed, a brutal battle erupted in the very center of their forces. Following Kilman's orders, his dragon gathered a massive searing fireball inside its mouth. Then it blasted the scorching beam directly at the Demon King. Seeing this, the Demon King muttered that he had not faced that attack in ages. In a split second, he nimbly dodged the dragon breath and locked the beast's head in his arms. And then, with brutal force, he ripped its head clean off. Witnessing this horrific sight, Kilman was so terrified he could not utter a single word. The other mages reacted instantly, unleashing a relentless rain of magical attacks. In an instant, blinding flashes of light and energy spheres completely engulfed the Demon King. Pay close attention here, because Kilman thought they won. But as the smoke cleared, we all saw the Demon King's form had completely mutated. Kilman's heart sank. Just as the ancient books described, the Demon King had undergone a horrific mutation. Slayers screamed that this was his final form, while ordinary soldiers trembled in sheer terror at the monstrous sight. He spun around, immediately demanding they stay calm and not let themselves be consumed by their own fear. But not even the general himself could stop his body from shaking under the Demon King's overwhelming pressure. Meanwhile, the Demon King showed no sign of fear. He knew perfectly well that Kayla's plan had one fatal weakness. There was no escape. The plan used magic circles to invade the heart of the guild, directly leaving absolutely no way to retreat. If they lost the battle, they would be completely trapped with no way out. But he never cared about that flaw, because a Demon King never worries about having an escape route. He even suspected Kayla had already foreseen this. With that thought, his destructive aura flared up even more. Faced with this terrible threat, Kilman ordered everyone to prepare for a fight. Meanwhile, deep beneath the castle, Linlin finished attaching Kayla's head back onto his body. I know what you're thinking. What a heartbreaking scene. She prayed desperately while remembering the disturbing experiment Kayla made her perform just yesterday. During that test, he discovered that even if he lost a limb, he could regenerate by reattaching it to his body. After testing arms and legs, it was time for the head. Pointing at his own neck, he told her it would hurt a bit. So when Linlin had to cut it, she had to do it with one swift blow. With the test finished, Kayla ordered her to find Seldra's maid and deliver an exact message without changing a single word. Shortly after Linlin met in secret with Seldra's personal maid, she revealed that Kayla planned to use the battle's chaos to assassinate Seldra. Furious, the maid swore to warn her master immediately. Seeing she took the bait, Linlin suggested Seldra strike first and cut his head off. After all, without a head, Kayla could never survive, no matter his crazy regeneration. That was how she executed the risky plan, but after he spent so much time decapitated, she terrifiedly doubted if this madness would actually work. Just as panic was completely consuming her, Kayla slowly opened his eyes. Sitting up, he commented that the magic dagger they used had seriously slowed down his regeneration process. But in the end, he survived, and that was the only thing that mattered for his twisted plan. The very first thing he did upon standing was destroy the master-servant contract binding him to Linlin. Seeing this noble gesture, she was shocked. Kayla looked straight at her and told her she was finally free. But against all odds, she did not run. Instead, she rushed to throw herself tightly into his arms. Through bitter tears, she begged him to take her along, swearing her entire life now belonged to him. Ignoring her heartbreaking cries, he coldly pushed her away and stepped forward. A single step toward the light would mean escaping the castle's watch. Yet just as he was about to grasp his freedom, she desperately threw herself right in his path. And that is where we leave them, right? As 3 fierce bolts blast from the blinding white light. All right, get ready, because today we are watching Lynn raise her shield, just as 3 masked figures block the exit. Looking closely, Kayla realized they were guild members who had come to completely destroy the Demon King's castle. They knew about the secret passage and set up an ambush, launching an attack the second they laid eyes on Kayla. Linlin stepped forward to shield him from the impact, screaming at him to run away while he still could. Terrified, Kayla asked her what she planned to do alone. Linlin reminded him she was his maid and had to protect him. But Kayla knew she only mastered basic defense spells and had no attack magic. Seeing Kayla standing completely still, Linlin yelled at him to run, but Kayla grabbed her shoulder and threw her behind him, leaving her outside her own shield. Lightning strikes slammed directly into Kayla. The enemies recognized Kayla, the Demon King's son. Everyone called Kylo an absolute coward, so they thought one ultimate spell would easily finish him. But as someone reincarnated into this world, Kayla knew the original owner of this body had always been a total coward. He had never unleashed his true power or shown anyone what he was actually capable of doing. Pay close attention here, because they had absolutely no idea how strong Kayla really was. With that in mind, Kayla raised his hand and completely shattered their magic attack with a single casual swipe. Linlin watched in shock, her entire view of Kylo instantly changing while Kayla could feel the enemy's pure terror, even through their mask. But Kayla did not give him a second. He charged like lightning and slammed him violently into the dirt. The downed mage desperately tried to chant a high-level spell to save himself. But a second later, Kayla clenched his fist and crushed his head, leaving Linlin screaming that killing a heaven-ranked mage in one blow was impossible. After finishing him off, Kayla slowly stood up and locked his cold gaze onto the remaining two. Both of them instantly backed away, raising their guard before launching another high-level magic spell straight at Kayla. The spell was called the Spear of Cursed Light, possessing colossal power, but demanding a devastating toll from the caster. They bet everything on this single strike, and recognizing the magic, Linlin desperately screamed for Kayla to fall back. But before she could finish, two spears of light had already pierced Kayla's body, while another struck Linlin's shoulder. You can feel the tension building as Kayla suddenly realized he could no longer move his body. Lin looked at him shaking with fear, crying as she apologized for failing to protect him. Seeing their attack connect the invaders finally sighed in relief, not wanting to waste a single second more. One drew his sword to finish Kayla and Linlin, but the man behind him stopped him, saying killing them so quickly would be a waste. He then approached Linlin with a twisted smirk, raising her chin with utter contempt. Linlin realized his disgusting intentions instantly and began cursing him with everything she had. Hearing her words, the man pressed his sword against Linlin's neck, promising he would teach her a lesson very soon. But first his plan was to execute Kayla. Yet the very moment he raised his sword to brutally decapitate Kayla, Kayla felt a faint magic vibration around him, and suddenly his father, Demon King Hell, appeared right before his eyes. Shocked to see him, Kayla asked if his battle was over, but his father sternly ordered him to listen closely. Out of all his children, Seldra would commit any atrocity to inherit the throne, showing no care for other demons. On the other hand, Tong lacked even the slightest ambition of becoming the Demon King. Kayla interrupted, saying he did not care about them, only wanting to know how his father had managed to appear here. His father revealed to Kayla that every generation of Demon Kings possessed a unique hidden ability. Before passing, they could transfer their entire accumulated magic to their heir, making Kayla's eyes widen in sheer shock. His father continued explaining that despite watching him for only a very brief moment, he knew Kayla was the ultimate candidate for the throne as a dark magic sphere began forming in his hand. He pressed the sphere directly into Kayla's chest. And with that, his father's spirit slowly started to fade away. Meanwhile, at the heart of the battlefield, the severed head of Demon King Hell lay resting on the cold ground. Beside the general's lifeless body, the guild paid a devastatingly high price, before finally taking down the Demon King. Nobody expected his terrifying strength, and trust me, what a wild ending. Come along with me as we watch this guy teleport right into battle, inherit the Demon King's power, and shatter the spears of light piercing his body. Even the light spear skewering Linlin vanished along with them. The two guild members had no idea why Kayla's magical power was suddenly surging like crazy. Feeling the raw energy coursing through him, Kayla smirked. With the Demon King Hell dead, his massive power now belonged to him. The plan worked. Riding a wave of pure euphoria, Kayla simply raised his hand, unleashing a devastating storm of magical power all around. Sensing the absolute danger, the two men tried to make a run for it. But Kayla wasn't going to let them escape. Clenching his fist, he went on the attack. With a single strike, they flew back dozens of meters, slamming into the wall and knocking them completely unconscious. Kayla finally held the power of hell. Granted, his current body wouldn't hold up for long, but all that mattered was that he could finally escape this cursed castle. Freedom was within reach. But pay attention here before he could even take a step. A strange blue light suddenly enveloped his entire body. Linlin knew it was teleportation magic. As Kayla began to fade, he desperately reached out to grab her before she was left behind. Forgetting everything else, Linlin quickly leaped into the teleportation circle right beside him, as the circle flashed with bright blue light. They both looked around, realizing they were in a completely unfamiliar place. Shocked, Linlin asked if he knew how to use such magic, also noticing that her wounds were completely healed. Kayla explained he didn't cast it. It was actually a protective spell the Demon King had prepared for his children. They spent 3 days drifting through that void. The Demon King designed this so his heirs could escape if the castle fell in battle. After hearing Kayla's explanation, Linlin realized the Demon King Hell was truly gone. She solemnly vowed to support Kayla as the next rightful ruler. Kayla felt she was totally getting the wrong idea, since he had zero interest in claiming that throne. But seeing how isolated he was in this new world, he decided to keep quiet about it for now. After walking for quite a while, they spotted a massive, majestic castle looming in the distance. You won't believe her reaction when she saw it? Linlin stopped dead in her tracks, eyes wide open in sheer shock. It was Arcel, a magical kingdom that trained elite warriors for one brutal purpose: to completely exterminate demons. And right now, they were celebrating her father's downfall. To hide their demon identities, Linlin quickly used transformation magic. Kayla concealed his true form too. As they entered the city, he asked Linlin to fill him in on this new land. She explained that Arcel was a small island nation, located right on the eastern border of Teruya. It was protected by Shri Ho, a colossal, mysterious creature that dwelled in the surrounding seas. Thanks to that divine protection, magic thrived, allowing the kingdom to breed countless powerful and terrifying wizards. And for the longest time, they had viewed the demon race as their absolute worst enemy. Hearing this, Kayla couldn't understand why his father's magic circle had transported them to such a dangerous place. Standing behind him, Linlin whispered that they needed to leave immediately. Kayla argued that they needed to prepare first. He knew that to achieve his grand dream in this world, mastering magic was absolutely essential. In this country, almost everything seemed to run on pure magic. Even several of the buildings around them were floating majestically in the air because of it. If he could master magic here, he could build castles far grander than any of his creations in the video game. Just then, a loud stomach growl shattered the silence behind him. Linlin was starving, so he led her to a local food stall to buy some local dishes. But the moment she took her first bite, there was no stopping her. She devoured everything that looked even remotely edible. By the end of the evening, they ended up walking into a local tavern. To toast the fall of the Demon King, a fiery redhead bought drinks for the whole house. Seeing free alcohol, they both joined in. But after just a few drinks, Kayla's head started spinning. Spotting them, the mysterious red-haired woman suddenly stopped in her tracks. Then a highly cunning smile spread across her face. Kayla barely drank anything before running out to throw up. Seeing this, Linlin reminded him that these people were celebrating his father's death, and that's where we leave them, with him celebrating in the middle of his own grief. All right, you and I are diving right back in, just as Kyla was about to complain, when a crowd rushed past announcing a new S-rank quest. Linlin's heart completely froze. The previous mission to defeat the Demon King was already an S-rank quest, and now another S-rank quest appeared. Things get instantly tense as she grabs Kayla and follows the rushing crowd to see what it is. When they arrive, Kayla spots his own face drawn on a massive poster hanging high up on the wall. Turns out the new order is to hunt down none other than the Demon King's very own son. Seeing this, Kayla yells in fury, demanding to know why they are still hunting him if the Demon King is already dead. Linlin instantly slaps her hand over his mouth, quickly explaining to the crowd that he is just extremely drunk. Nobody thinks twice about it, instead whispering that Kayla is supposedly the absolute weakest of the Demon King's children. To them, this mission seems like an easy B-rank job at the very most. After watching for a bit, Kayla drags Linwin away from the plaza, telling her they must keep a low profile and call him Jiru instead of young master from now on. Linwin mutters that the name sounds super weird, but just as they plan to pack up and flee the city, a red-haired woman by the road suddenly calls them over. She asks them what that new S-rank quest is all about. Lin quickly lies, saying they barely glanced at it. Meanwhile, Kayla recognizes her as the woman who bought them drinks at the tavern, the famous Hope of Arcel. She was clearly no ordinary person. Now watch closely, because before Kayla even realizes what is happening, she pulls them both into a tight hug. Smiling, she mentions she was watching them in the tavern, adding that they both have a very strange scent on them. Hearing those words, Kayla instantly breaks into a cold sweat from sheer panic. Linlin pales in absolute terror. If their demon identities are exposed, countless local mages will surround and execute them on the spot. But to their absolute relief, the redhead simply laughs, saying they must be travelers who haven't bathed in days, explaining that sour odor. She then invites them to her place to enjoy a warm bath and grab some drinks together. Hearing this, Kayla and Linlin finally breathe again, forcing out an incredibly awkward laugh to hide their tension. Later that night, Kayla relaxes in a hot bath while staring at the snacks served right in front of him. He never imagined even the food here would be prepared using magic. This magical kingdom truly lives up to its legendary name. Wasn't this the perfect fantasy world he had always dreamed of exploring? Meanwhile, Linland is struggling in another room sharing a tub with Slyers. I know exactly what you are thinking. Keeping her disguise safe here is a total nightmare. Slyers notices her obvious nervousness and asks why she looks so completely terrified. She jokes that anyone would think Linland is a runaway demon, making Linland force a laugh and deny it immediately. Right after speaking, Slyers raises her hand, gathering a gentle shimmering cloud of steam directly in her palm. Smiling, she offers to use this special fragrance to help Linland relax, but the demon girl recognizes it instantly. This is no ordinary perfume. It is the concentrated aura of the pure holy element. For demons, this is the worst scent imaginable because it drains their mana. If her magic drops, her disguise spell will completely shatter. On the inside, Linland is desperately screaming for Kayla to come and rescue her. Meanwhile, completely unaware, Kayla is chilling in another room, calmly enjoying a warm, delicious cup of coffee, left with zero options. Linland forced herself to cover her nose and mouth to avoid breathing in the toxic scent. Right next to her, Slyers starts telling war stories about fighting the Demon King, leaning closer and closer as she describes the battles. Unable to hold her breath for another second, Linland bolts upright and gasps that they should finish the story some other time. Blaming an urgent bathroom emergency, she leaps out of the tub and sprints away in absolute sheer panic. Watching Linland run, Slyers smiles to herself and mutters that she apparently is not a big fan of holy energy. Right after stepping out, Kayla bumps into Linland in the hallway where she frantically runs to him, whispering how her real identity was almost exposed. After explaining everything, she frantically insists that they need to pack their bags and escape this dangerous place right away. Kayla processes this for a second and turns around, determined to finish his bath first. Suddenly, Slyers appears right behind them, asking if they are actually leaving already. Linland quickly spins around, stuttering out a cheap excuse to try and get them out of there as fast as possible. Slyers asks if they really want to miss the local magical drinks, promising they are 10,000 times better than the previous snacks. The second Kayla hears that his face becomes dead serious. He nods, immediately saying he is down. Meanwhile, mages silently surround the house. Trust me, you and I are going to suffer in the next episode. Let's dive in and see if a dangerous demon is actually hiding out here. Their leaders snap back that this was no ordinary beast, but the Demon King's own son. It was a once-in-a-lifetime shot, and they had to capture him, no matter what. Back inside, Slyers poured Kayla and Linland a drink, casually promising them it was made with holy water and tasted absolutely amazing. But since they're actually demons, Kayla and Linland could only stare at the holy water in their hands, shaking with pure terror inside. Sly then confessed that to take down the Demon King, she joined humanity's ultimate elite force, the legendary Tarkin Squad. After joining their ranks, she pushed herself through brutal, desperate training every single day. As she spoke, she pulled back her clothes to show off her training scars. Staring at a massive 3-inch wide wound, Kayla and Linland completely froze. Then Slyers gently ran her hand across her face, showing off yet another battle scar. She admitted she was actually blind in one eye, leaving Kayla completely stunned and wondering what this woman's game really was. Slyers explained that she used illusion magic most of the time, just to hide her disfigurements. Those scars were a constant reminder of that painful day. To defeat the Demon King, they had endured the most brutal, merciless training since they were kids, all just to stand a fighting chance against demons. She had basically thrown her whole life away. Suddenly, Sly stood up, got right in Kayla's face, and demanded to know what they had been doing all this time. Watch closely as she suddenly pulls up Kayla's shirt, slowly sliding her hand right up his chest. She demanded to know why he didn't have a single scar on his body and why his skin was as soft as a newborn baby's. Kayla felt his cover slipping away with every single touch. Then she leaned in and whispered the ultimate question. "You're a demon, right?" Hearing that, a cold sweat broke out all over him. Right then, a swarm of rats poured out of the fireplace, transforming into powerful mages in a blinding flash of light. Seeing this, Kayla and Linland realized things had gone horribly, horribly wrong. It looked like they had walked straight into her trap. Before they could even react, the mages closed in and surrounded them. But to Kayla's absolute shock, their leader yelled at Slyers instead, announcing they had finally cornered the spy demon hiding in the city. Slyers didn't even flinch, immediately stepping in to shield Kayla and Linlin. And that's when you and I realize these mages weren't actually hunting our main characters. Turns out Slyers was a demon too. Seeing that her cover was completely blown, she stopped pretending. Unleashing her massive magic power, she summoned her battle staff and stepped forward boldly. The mages didn't hesitate unleashing their spells directly at Slyers, but against such low-tier magic. She didn't even bother to dodge. As an elite mage of the Tarkin squad, these weaklings weren't even a threat. With a simple flick of her wrist, she launched a dark magic sphere that completely obliterated the room. The shockwave was so insanely destructive that even Kayla, heir to the Demon King's strength, was forced to take several steps back. After the massive blast, thick, heavy, dark energy lingered in the air. Linlin shielded Kayla, whispering in absolute horror that she couldn't believe someone could possess this much magical power. Once Kayla recovered from the shock, he immediately asked Slyers why on earth she had protected them. Slyers slowly turned around, revealing she was actually the daughter of Demon King Hell, making her Kayla's older sister. Afterward, Slyers led them to the Earth Demon tribe. Recognizing Kayla as the true heir, they showed immense respect and obeyed him instantly. Stepping into their subterranean city, Kayla looked around and realized this place was totally different from the Demon King's castle. None of the buildings used magic. Instead, they were built almost entirely from natural raw materials. The most mind-blowing part was the location. Hidden deep beneath this barren desert was a truly massive underground metropolis. Kayla thanked Slyers for bringing him here, knowing the unique talent of these earth demons was exactly what they needed now. Over a meal, Slyers mentioned that an outstanding warrior lived here whom they absolutely had to recruit. This immediately sparked Kayla's curiosity, and he asked what kind of demon this fighter actually was. Sly explained that while the Tarkin squad was marching toward the Demon King's castle, they stumbled upon this hidden city. The moment Killman laid eyes on the defenseless demons, he cold-bloodedly ordered a total, merciless massacre. The Earth demons were no match for the elite Tarkin squad, and their defenses quickly crumbled. And trust me, what Slyers witnessed next is bound to move us all, one brave warrior stepping up to protect helpless children. Killman watched him with curiosity. Join me to see what happens when he asked the demon his name. The Earth demon replied that his name was Douglas. Hearing this, Killman muttered the name. Facing the aggressive warrior, Douglas was fully prepared to fight to the death. But to his surprise, Killman ordered a retreat and marched to the Demon King's castle, leaving Douglas completely confused. Slyers explained that his incredible bravery had saved his entire tribe. After hearing Slyers' story, Kayla really started to get interested in Douglas. An earth demon capable of fighting exceeded his expectations. So Kayla called the chief, saying he wanted to meet Douglas. Hearing that name, the chief advised Kayla to choose someone else, explaining that Douglas was extremely stubborn. Kayla told him not to worry about that and to simply lead the way. They soon reached a blacksmith shop, but when Kayla proposed they leave together, Douglas instantly rejected him. Douglas declared that even if Kayla was the great Demon King's son, he had no obligation to follow him. Pay close attention here, because Kayla asked what would happen if he took him by force. Douglas turned around and said he would rather die fighting. Kayla asked why he insisted on staying. Douglas replied that he was born and raised there, so he had to protect his homeland. After saying this, he even apologized to Kayla. Seeing his stubborn determination, Kayla recalled how desperately he used to play trying to recruit an equally stubborn orc ally. In the end, Kayla sighed helplessly and turned away. But outside, he saw Slyers and Limlin completely wasted. This infuriated Kayla. He was working hard to recruit allies, while those two were partying like it was nothing. So, without hesitating for a single second, he decided to join the party. Soon all three ended up completely wasted. Fearing something bad would happen if they kept drinking, the chief quickly ordered them to bed. But while Kayla was fast asleep, the closed door of his room suddenly creaked open. Several earth demons entered one after another, armed with heavy axes. Approaching the bed, Douglas raised his axe over Kayla and insulted him, calling him a coward. With that, Douglas swung his axe directly at Kyla's head. But a second before impact, Kayla snapped his eyes open, dodging the brutal attack with lightning speed. Seeing this, Douglas was left in absolute shock. "I know what you are thinking. Fight time!" Kayla leaped out of bed as the earth demons lunged at him. However, Kayla was not surprised at all. When he visited Douglas at the blacksmith shop earlier, he had already noticed something was off. For starters, the handcuffs Douglas was forging did not look designed to hold orcs. Plus, while Kyla inspecting the village, he sensed someone tailing him from the shadows. From that moment on, Kayla started keeping a very close eye on his surroundings. Soon, he detected a weak magic barrier on a wall. Without his demon king power and insane perception, Callan would never have sensed such a subtle magic fluctuation. What caught his attention even more was that Slyars mentioned Douglas protected dark elves in the past. However, after traveling through the entire tribe, Kayla did not see a single one of them. Before he could think further, the demons charged. Kyla simply channeled his magic, moved at extreme speed, and knocked them all completely unconscious. In the end, only Douglas was left on the ground, staring at Kayla in absolute terror. Kyla stood up slowly and told Douglas that back then, the truth he hid from Kilman was not that he was protecting young elves, but that he refused to hand them over. Meaning Douglas was never protecting them. He was just keeping them from being snatched away, had the time come to break the barrier. Shortly after Kayla dragged Douglas to the plaza, the moment the earth demons saw them, they drew their weapons and surrounded Kayla. From their reaction, Kayla guessed the entire tribe was involved. Seeing Douglas, the chief approached in terror, asking if he had really failed. Douglas could only hang his head and stammer out an apology. "Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens after this deadly warning. Let's watch these trash demons lose their minds as Kayla absolutely destroys them and captures Douglas." After all, they always claimed Kayla was the weakest, most cowardly son of the Demon King. Leaving the plaza, Kayla dragged Douglas straight to the spot where he previously discovered that hidden magic barrier. Threatened by Kayla, Douglas reluctantly pulled out a glowing purple stone and placed it against the barrier. The moment that purple stone touched the magic circle, the wall vanished in a blinding flash, revealing a deep, pitch-black cave. And trapped deep inside that cave were countless captive dark elves. Kayla had prepared himself, but this horrifying sight hit him hard because their actual condition was far worse than he imagined. Hearing that Kayla had been brutally ambushed, Slyars and Linlin rushed to the scene without losing a single second. But the moment they reached Kayla, they completely froze in pure shock at the sight inside that cave. Without even turning around, Kayla coldly asked Slyars if he could use transfer magic to read the elves' memories. Stepping forward, Slyars admitted that while it wouldn't be as simple as sharing his own mind, he would definitely try. Now pay attention here, because a little elf girl's agonizing memories are about to hit Kayla like a truck. Through these painful visions, Kayla realized this dungeon was a living, breathing hell for the helpless dark elves after they forced her mother to breed. This poor little girl was born directly into this pitch-black cage. Greedy human nobles would visit to take their pick, tearing children away from their families by absolute force. In return, those nobles paid the boss a fortune, a disgusting trade that every single land demon took part in. The dark elves only knew of this horror because of new prisoners dragged into the cave from time to time. And those newcomers would tell the children stories about clear skies and beautiful sparkling blue oceans on the outside. They spoke of delicious food and free journeys, things these kids locked in a freezing cave had never even seen. Those stories filled their young hearts with pure curiosity and deep longing. Their ultimate dream was for their children to escape this cave and live freely under the warm sun. Witnessing this unspeakable cruelty, Kayla ground his teeth in pure rage, clenched his fist, and spun around instantly. He threw a devastating punch straight into Douglas's face, sending him flying 8 meters back against the far wall. Slyars confronted them as well, boiling with absolute fury. "I know what you're thinking. They actually treated these kids like products, selling them off to heartless human nobles." Groveling on the floor, Douglas realized lying was useless, admitting those wealthy humans always craved this incredibly rare exotic race. Since dark elves were blessed by nature holding them hostage, allowed the land demons to enjoy absolute peace. To Douglas, wasn't that the perfect excuse to breed and raise these living souls like mindless cattle? Linlin spat curses at him, demanding how he could enslave fellow demons in such a sickening way. Douglas scrambled up, screaming that the Demon King was dead, and this was their only hope of surviving the humans. At that moment, Kayla recalled his own torment under his father's thumb in his past life. But these children's agony was far worse. Shaking off any remaining doubt, Kayla immediately called out to Slyars and Linlin. He coldly ordered them to finish the bloody business Kilman left behind, and both of them fiercely agreed without a second thought. Hearing Douglas's enraged roar, the land demons stationed outside started flooding in to surround our heroes. Linlin stepped right up to block their advance. Raising her staff, Slayers unleashed powerful magic, asking how they dared attack the rightful heir. But the trash demons just laughed, calling Kayla a useless coward who deserved no respect. After effortlessly knocking down several enemies, Linlin calmly told them they couldn't be more wrong. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Douglas launched another direct brutal attack at Kayla. But Kayla, wielding the inherited power of the Demon King, was different now, and kicked him away, like trash. Looking up, the Dark Elves realized this stranger was actually fighting to rescue them from their horrific captivity. Moved by his actions, one of the female Dark Elves stood up determined to step forward and help him. Seeing this, another elf tried to stop her. But the brave girl Wood firmly argued that if they did nothing, now their endless torment would never actually stop. Refusing to live another second in such misery, the memories of her trauma suddenly overwhelmed Wood, and she fell to her knees weeping. Her heartbreaking, desperate cries immediately caught Kayla's attention. Kayla looks Douglas dead in the eyes, asking if he hears her crying. And trust me, you and I know he will pay for every tear. Stick with me here because Kayla never expected Douglas to suddenly pull a small red stone from his pocket. Without hesitation, he tossed it in his mouth and swallowed. Seeing this, the other Earth demons did the exact same thing. Lynn screamed in horror. It was Earth ore. She thought that item was just a legend, but it actually existed. Hearing that, Kayla spun around to ask Linlin what it was, but Slears cut him off, yelling a warning to be extremely careful. He explained that consuming this ore boosted physical abilities tenfold briefly, but the side effect cut down their remaining lifespan. As Slears was explaining this, Douglas's muscles suddenly began to expand rapidly. Then he let out a brutal roar. Kayla was shocked because physical strength wasn't the only thing rising. His magical energy was skyrocketing at an alarming rate, and Kayla still hadn't mastered the Demon King's power. In that split second of distraction, Douglas's massive fist was already right in front of his face. At such close range, dodging was completely impossible. But suddenly, thick vines erupted from the ground. Look at this. They wrapped around Douglas's entire body in a second. No matter how much Douglas struggled, he couldn't break free. Kayla turned and saw a dark elf had helped him. The other dark elves yelled in shock. Did you have to do that right now? Douglas also turned furiously, cursing Wood. Kayla seized the moment, rushed forward, and slammed his magic-charged fist directly into his abdomen. At the same time, Kayla looked at the dark elf and asked if her name was really Wood. He confessed he actually liked her style. Wood froze, staring back at him in complete bewilderment. Douglas spat a huge mouthful of blood and furiously cursed Wood as a traitor, roaring as he shattered the vines. Douglas's massive body began to swell even more. A chilling dread washed over Kayla, but with his arm still trapped inside Douglas, dodging was out of the question. With no other choice, Kayla took the brutal hit head on. Crashing into the wall, he felt his bones shatter completely, though his insane regeneration healed him instantly. He never imagined a single piece of that ore could be this terrifying. After shoving Kayla aside, Douglas immediately spun around and charged right at Wood. Lunging forward, he grabbed her by the jaw, lifting her high as he roared that he'd rip her head off. Under Douglas's crushing pressure, a terrifying crack echoed from Wood's neck. I know what you're thinking. Kayla never expected him to target Wood, but now her neck is about to snap. The gap between them was massive. Even if he sprinted with everything he had, he'd never make it in time, unless he used a ranged attack. In that split second, he found himself in a pitch-black space. A shadowy figure materialized behind him, revealing that this place was his own inner consciousness. Kayla spun around in alarm, demanding to know who it was. But the shadow only asked if he still wanted to save the elf. Even though time moved much slower here than outside, he still had to act with absolute speed. Hearing that, he immediately asked how to save her. The shadow replied that he wasn't ready for the Demon King's full power, but as his mind and body synced up, he would gradually unlock more of that overwhelming strength. Kayla cut him off desperately, saying the explanations could wait for later. Right now, he only needed to know what portion of that strength he could unleash immediately. As he spoke, the faint outline of a bow materialized in his hand for a brief moment. The shadow promised they'd meet again soon, and finally uttered his old blue star name, Jongju. Realizing the shadow actually knew his true identity, Kayla's heart completely skipped a beat. But just as he tried to demand answers, his mind snapped back to the brutal reality of the fight. Suddenly, a massive blue bow materialized in his hands. Without wasting a second, he aimed firmly at his target. Sensing that overwhelming magical power, Douglas spun around in terror, instantly recognizing the legendary weapon in Kayla's hands. Wood seized the distraction and bit her captor's hand with absolutely all her strength. She then summoned vines to burst from the ground as Kayla finished charging his devastating shot. With a fierce whistle, the magic arrow soared, and upon hitting Douglas, intense blue flames erupted everywhere. And believe me, not even Kayla expected the attack to be that brutal. Get ready, because today, we're going to watch as Douglas is turned to ashes by blue flames in 3 seconds, leaving Kayla completely clueless about that mysterious shadow inside her own mind. Meanwhile, back at the cave entrance, Linland was still locked in a brutal battle against the Earth Demons. Since the space was way too cramped, Slyers couldn't unleash her destructive large-scale magic either. Seeing their struggle, Kayla aimed her bow, quickly pulled back, and fired 7 or 8 consecutive arrows that whistled through the air. The arrows flew as if they had eyes of their own, hitting the demons directly in the head. Slyers was absolutely thrilled to see Kayla mastering long-range attacks. Soon they wiped out or chased away all nearby monsters. Staring at the earth mineral in her hand, she admitted this item was far more powerful than she had imagined. Then Kayla approached the Dark Elves, telling them they were free and should never get captured by those scumbags again. For a second, the prisoners couldn't believe it, begging the young man to confirm if this was actually real. He assured them it was urging them to take their kids and search for a peaceful place to live. Hearing his words, everyone fell to their knees at the exact same time to show Kayla their deep gratitude. Now pay attention here. Slyers wanted to recruit those Earth Demons at first, but that was clearly impossible. Hearing this, Kayla approached Wood, asking if she was dragged here against her will. The girl quietly nodded, confirming her fears. She then asked if she had any family left. Wood looked down and nodded in silence, completely heartbroken. So Kayla invited her to travel with them from now on, since they really needed a reliable guide. Wood shyly replied that she wasn't an Earth creature and didn't really know this region very well. She even shivered a bit fearfully, admitting she was worried she wouldn't be of any help to him. He told her not to worry. As a nature-blessed elf, she'd already shown plenty of bravery. To him, that was more than enough. Saying this, he offered his hand. That simple gesture instantly triggers Wood to remember her incredibly painful past. In her mind, she couldn't even visualize the faces of her own parents anymore. Left all alone, the demons captured her and dragged her to this hellhole, forcing her to believe she'd suffer here forever. Yet here was someone standing right in front of her, promising to rescue her from this nightmare. With tears streaming down her face, she hesitantly asked if she could truly stay by his side. Kia made it clear she wouldn't follow him. Instead, they'd walk side by side. You and I saw how they saved the elves and finally got back on their journey. Before officially heading out, Linland ran up to Wood to boss her around, reminding her she was the rookie. So from this very second, Wood had to obey her every single command. Saying goodbye to the Dark Elves, the group moved on, and Sly suggested finding a river. Hearing this, Wood stepped up, pointing a direction, and claiming she could smell water. Hearing that, Linland immediately walked over with a smug grin, boasting that the newbie had talent and was kind of like her. Kayla asked Slyers why they needed a river. She explained that traveling on foot was too slow, so they had to find water and search for beasts to ride. Right behind them, Linland chimed in, suggesting that catching a dragon would be the ultimate move. Slyers told her to stop dreaming. Let's be real, even finding a single unicorn would be an absolute miracle. After thinking it over, Kayla decided to follow their advice and head directly toward the water. Meanwhile, right by a small stream, not too far away, 2 unicorns were peacefully drinking water. Suddenly they sensed something off and raised their heads instantly, their eyes filled with pure alert. Spotting the approaching threat, they bolted without a second thought. Moments later, an absolute beast of a creature arrived. The tracks left by this monster measured almost 2 meters long, revealing it was the legendary and terrifying wyvern. Kayla's group had absolutely no idea this was happening. They kept traveling toward the stream while Linland babbled nonstop about her ridiculous dream of catching a dragon. Shortly after they left, a woman in a white robe arrived at the tribe. Seeing her, the last surviving demon begged for help. This mysterious lady was Cuddly, the same one who previously cast a tracking spell on the Demon King's severed head. Following that trail, her squad had wiped out many demons, but they still found 0 clues about Kyla's location. She figured the spell failed due to multiple targets. Stick with me to find out what happens next. Come along with me, because after the massive battle, Karka insists it is impossible for so many Demon King children to survive. Was there really no way to figure out who the real Kyla was? Audrea, chewing on meat nearby, added that hunting down every single target was impossible, but Killian suddenly cut them off, saying they had absolutely no other choice. They would simply have to slaughter every demon scattered across the entire continent. Next, Killian asked Cuddly if she could quickly scout out the nearby demon tribes. Cuddly replied that traveling alone let her teleport short distances, which would speed things up. Dai stood up, saying the rest of them just needed to follow her lead and sweep the battlefield. Having reached an agreement, Cuddly slowly rose as a bright blue light glowed in her wide eyes. In the very next second, her entire body vanished into thin air. While investigating the Earth Tribe, Cuddly detected the faint magical trace of Kayla. The surviving demon explained everything Kyla had done there. Hearing this, Cuddly immediately demanded to know which direction Kayla had ultimately headed in. The demon claimed he knew nothing, desperately begging her to save his life. Pay close attention here. A lightning bolt pierced his skull, and Cuddly cast tracking magic on Kayla's lingering aura. Meanwhile, Kayla's group finally arrived at a stream. Spotting the water, Kyla praised Wood, remarking that elves were amazing for smelling it from miles away. Linlin rushed to tell Wood not to get cocky, since they had not eaten anything in ages. Kyla's stomach had already started growling loudly. Linlin bragged about her fishing skills, promising Kyla he would soon have delicious grilled fish to eat. But before she could even finish talking, every fish in the stream suddenly leaped out of the water, and they landed directly into Wood's arms. Amid the general confusion, Wood explained she used nature magic to control the current. Seeing her take all the spotlight, Linlin felt her own insecurity growing deeper and deeper. Even when Linlin tried to help by starting a campfire, Slayers beat her to it with a massive flame, making her feel completely useless. Soon the fish were fully cooked, and everyone dug in. After a few bites, Kayla looked at Linlin and asked if she would eat. Linlin said she had no appetite, and Slayers immediately snatched her portion away. I know what you're thinking. Kayla is super attentive. He noticed Linlin's gloom and suggested gathering local forest fruit. Hearing that, Linlin cheered right up, promising to bring fruit. Wood tried using her powers to help, but Kayla stopped her. By the time he turned around, Linlin had already run off into the distance. Slayers saw right through his little move and teased that he was surprisingly considerate. With Linlin gone, Wood mentioned seeing unicorns as a child, claiming she just caught their scent right here. Kayla muttered that catching a dragon would be amazing, but Slayers frowned, insisting real dragons did not exist here. Running deep into the woods, Linlin quickly spotted an apple tree. Desperate to stand out, she ignored her footing and jumped, stepping on something. But as she reached for an apple, her foothold began to move. Linlin peered down and saw a massive lantern-like eye staring right back at her. Following its gaze, her eyes traced the rest of the colossal creature. Horrified, she realized she was standing directly on top of a wyvern's head. Meanwhile, Kayla's group remained by the fire, discussing the limits of Wood's power. Wood confessed she could not fully describe it, but she sensed nature within a specific range. Kayla figured it worked like a video game map, while Slayers added it was perfect for locating dungeons. Wood explained that her current detection range was actually not very wide. Kyla asked if there was any way to expand that range later on. Wood said that if she consumed a 1,000-year-old dragon's vision stone, her range would expand hundreds of times. Hearing that staggering hundreds of times figure, Kayla was left completely frozen in shock. And that is where we leave it. Because hunting a 1,000-year-old dragon will be absolute madness. Do not miss it. All right, follow me on this one. Kayla asked if dragons are truly that powerful, and Slayers explained they are the ultimate predators, absolutely hating demons. Only a select few humans with truly terrifying mental power could ever hope to tame a dragon. Kyla let out a cold laugh at the irony. It turns out humans, supposedly the weakest race, are the only ones capable of taming them. Slayers told them to brush it off, reassuring everyone that running into a dragon in such a remote place was completely impossible. But right at that exact moment, Lynn suddenly came screaming into view with a colossal dragon hot on her heels, leaving everyone completely frozen in shock. The moment they snapped out of it, they bolted for their lives. While running, Kayla demanded to know what on earth Slyers was talking about. Didn't he just promise a dragon was impossible here? Slyers yelled back that he had no clue, never having seen such a massive beast. Not far from there, Cuddly was tracking Kyla's aura through the area when a loud, terrifying roar suddenly echoed in the distance. Cuddly stopped in his tracks, muttering that the sound definitely belonged to a dragon. After a desperate sprint, Kayla's group spotted a giant boulder ahead and quickly dove behind it to hide. Losing their trail, the dragon scanned the area for a moment, and once convinced they were truly gone, it turned and flew away. Now pay attention here, because Slyers furiously turned on Linwen, demanding to know what the hell she had done. He sent her to gather some simple fruit, yet she managed to bring back a whole dragon instead. Wood stared at the path of the retreating beast, noting that given its massive size, it must be over 1,000 years old. Kayla gasped in shock, realizing what that meant. But before he could finish his thought, Cuddly finished his sentence stating the dragon had an inner stone. Kayla turned around and knew this was the perfect chance. Hearing those words, the 4 members of Kyla's group stared directly at Cuddly, as a heavy, dead silence filled the air. Slyers was the first to recognize her, her face twisting in pure terror as she screamed that Cuddly belonged to White Tarkin. The moment they heard that, Kayla's entire group jumped up and scrambled backward in a panic. They drew their weapons, bracing for a brutal fight, as rumors described this woman as an incredibly ruthless and deadly mage. Kyla took another step back, her heart sinking. She thought that after the Demon King's death and her escape from the castle, she would finally find peace. Seeing how shaken up they were, Cuddly calmly told them to relax, insisting there was no need for a fight here. This left Kyla completely baffled. Cuddly then looked at Slyers and reminded her that resisting was pointless, since a single curse from her could easily erase them from existence. Slyers did not dare to argue and simply grit her teeth, knowing full well that this woman was not bluffing at all. "I know what you are thinking." And yeah, Kayla panicked immediately, asking Slyers if Cuddly was actually telling the truth. Slyers whispered back that Cuddly was not exaggerating, as her power was far greater than all of theirs combined. Linlin panicked, asking what they should do. Cuddly assured them that if they came peacefully, their lives would be safe for now. Kyla demanded to know where she planned on taking them. Cuddly replied that they were going to her Captain Killian. Hearing that feared name, a cold sweat broke out on Slyers' face. She never imagined that the actual leader of humanity's strongest squad would be wandering around this remote area. Kayla knew perfectly well that if they agreed to go with Cuddly, their chances of survival were practically zero. Without hesitating, he drew his bow and fired. Seeing the incoming arrow, Cuddly calmly raised her hand, conjuring a powerful barrier. Slyers immediately hoisted her staff, unleashing a flurry of spell attacks, charged with violent, deafening thunder. Cuddly easily blocked both strikes. Taking advantage of the smoke covering her vision, Wood began channeling the raw energy of nature. In an instant, massive thick vines erupted from the ground right beneath Cuddly's feet, trapping her. The plants quickly snaked up her legs, while Linlin wrapped her fists in pure mana and charged directly into the fray. Lacking any ranged moves, her only option was to close the gap and smash the magic shield with raw physical strength. Sensing the immense danger, Slyers desperately screamed at Linlin to fall back, but unfortunately it was already too late. A razor-sharp shard of ice had already materialized right between Cuddly's hands. With a violent blast, she shattered the vines binding her and sent Linlin flying backward through the air. Cuddly raised her hands again to form another spell, coldly warning them that bringing back their corpses would do just fine. Dozens of magic circles materialized behind her, launching an endless barrage of icy spears at blinding speed. Slyers raised her shield to block it, and trust me, you and I are in for an insane ending. Get ready, because you and I are about to see a downpour of ice stakes smash the barrier. Seeing Linlin slip inside just in time, Kayla sighed in relief. With tears in her eyes, Linlin apologized to Kayla, deeply regretting that she had not been any help. Slyers screamed at them to hurry and plan something, since her barrier would not hold out much longer. Kayla turned around instantly and asked Slyers if she actually knew that powerful attack spell. Sly admitted that even if she knew it, her version could never match Cuddly's insane level. While they talked, those floating ice stakes multiplied, raining down at a faster and faster speed. Soon cracks spread across the barrier. At this brutal pace, they would end up completely shredded in under a minute. Kayla's mind raced at 1,000 miles an hour, searching for an escape. Seconds later, his eyes suddenly flashed. He remembered the mysterious shadow in his consciousness. If he could enter that mental space again, he might unlock another powerful skill. With that idea, Caleb clenched his fists and forced his magical power to overflow wildly. Watch this. Slayers saw him and screamed, asking what he was doing. She warned him that releasing his magic would break the barrier instantly. But Kayla acted as if he didn't even hear her. Deep in his mind, he kept shouting for the shadow to appear. Meanwhile, the dragon, who was about to go back to sleep, suddenly heard a massive crash behind him. Sensing the Demon King's power, and Kyla Cuddly remarked that such force only awakens at the absolute limit. She finally understood why she couldn't track Kayla's exact location before this. With that said, she launched the ice stakes, even faster. Inside the barrier, Caleb tried to concentrate his magic in vain, failing to enter his mental space. By his calculations, that crack in his consciousness would only show up on the brink of death. Finally, under that deadly ice curse, the shield shattered, just when they were about to perish on the spot. The terrifying dragon chasing them returned out of nowhere, interrupting Cuddly's powerful spell. But this time it only stared at Kayla's group on the ground without launching any attacks. Floating in midair, Cuddly couldn't understand the beast's behavior, so she formed another seal and restarted her ice attack. Seeing the ice stakes fall, the dragon spread its wings, shielding Kayla's group beneath them. You and I need to watch this closely. It bowed its head to Kayla, and as they locked eyes, the beast's memories flooded his mind. In those memories, a demon woman rode on the dragon's back, soaring high under the blue sky. As the images became clear, Kayla finally realized that this mysterious demon woman was actually his own mother. She and the dragon had lived happily together in the forest every single day. After seeing that memory, Kayla asked the dragon if he knew her. The beast only stared back in silence. After staring at him for over 10 seconds, it suddenly opened its jaws and spat out a massive red pearl. Kayla caught the red gem on pure instinct and asked what it was. Only then did the dragon speak, calling it his perception stone. Kayla immediately pressed him, asking why he would give him something so incredibly valuable. The dragon warned him that there was no time, ordering him to hide his magic and escape quickly. Next, the colossal beast turned around and blasted a scorching column of fire directly toward Cuddly. Cuddly stopped her attack instantly and conjured a protective shield. Defending herself, she muttered that a dragon helping demons was incredibly strange. Kayla knew perfectly well that with their current power, they stood no chance against this fearsome mage, so they took advantage of the distraction to turn and flee. Seeing them escape, Cuddly prepared to stop them. The dragon anticipated her moves. A second later, the blast of fire it breathed out became far more devastating. Cuddly had no choice but to focus first on stabilizing the protective barrier in front of her. That was when her eyes, which were always closed, slowly began to open, revealing a dark gaze. Instantly, a massive frosty magic circle formed above her head. As she fully opened her eyes, a gigantic iceberg emerged. The dragon's eyes widened in terror at the colossal frozen mass. In that split second, it recalled those happy days with the demon woman. But before that memory could finish, the gigantic iceberg violently crashed down right onto its massive body. Hearing the horrific impact behind him, Kayla glanced back as a wave of cold panic washed over him. The mighty dragon had been pierced straight through by the ice shard, lying motionless and dying on the ground. Cuddly landed beside it, demanding to know why it helped demons. And trust me, you and I are left on a cliffhanger here, as she prepares to rip out its memories before it dies. Come along, that dragon read her dark intentions instantly. So before Cuddly could even act, the beast incinerated its own body, leaving a final warning that she would one day regret everything she did. With those final words, it crumbled into ash. But because the dragon bought them time, Kayla and her group had already escaped far away. As long as Kayla did not use the Demon King's power, Cuddly could never track their exact location. Absolutely furious. Cuddly clenched her fists and began chanting a spell. She raised her hand, releasing countless glowing magic butterflies into the air. Meanwhile, once they cleared Cuddly's range, Slayers asked Kayla about the beast. Kayla revealed that from the memory she saw, the dragon actually knew her mother. Linlin gasped in shock, pointing out that dragons and demons never coexist peacefully. She then asked what else she saw in that vision, but Kayla admitted she was still in the dark. She could only feel their deep happiness together, and how the dragon had gifted her mother a mysterious red pearl. Pay close attention here, because they all recognized that gem instantly as the legendary Insight Stone, the ultimate dragon treasure. Slyers muttered under his breath that it seemed the Dragon Queen herself had just saved their lives. Staring down at the stone in her palm, Kayla wondered what kind of bond connected that beast to her mother. After a brief thought, Kayla handed the gem to Wood, and Slyers ordered her to absorb its power immediately. White Tarkin was already targeting them, and they desperately needed the elf's tracking abilities to avoid being ambushed. Wood stared at the glowing jewel in her palm, hesitating since it was far too precious to consume. Kayla stepped forward and cut her off, reminding her that no one else could use it, so she had to swallow it now. Hearing that, Wood stopped hesitating and popped the gem into her mouth, gulping it down before her eyes snapped wide open. Suddenly, Wood gasped and threw her head back as a brilliant red light began pouring from her eyes. Instantly, the ancient memories of the dragon flooded straight into Wood's mind. In those visions, Wood discovered that ever since its birth, the dragon had been a tragic test subject for humans. Cruel humans performed horrific experiments without a shred of mercy, leaving its body covered in painful new wounds every single day. As human generations came and went, they kept tearing the poor creature's body apart for their tests. Whenever the dragon was on the verge of death, human mages healed it, just to restart that endless nightmare. Centuries of torture completely broke the dragon's spirit until it finally gave up and simply stopped crying. But guess what happened? While it was waiting for death, the strongest Demon King, Carlton launched an invasion on the human realm. During the chaos, the lab holding the dragon was blown to pieces. And for the first time in centuries, the dragon saw the sun escaping that living hell without looking back. Soaring high into the sky, it finally felt the beautiful, breathtaking freedom of flight once more. After flying for days, it found its own kind and warned them of the absolute cruelty of humanity, even suggesting they ally with demons to overthrow the kingdoms. But shocker, not a single dragon believed the truth. By then, dragons had formed tight bonds with humans, even fighting alongside them, to wipe out the demon race. None of them realized humans only approached them because they had already tortured countless test subjects like this poor beast. Those humans had experimented on them just to learn how to manipulate their trust. Over time, they even mastered their unique magic. So when the dragon spoke the truth, everyone rejected him. Instead, they cast him out. He tried turning to the demons, but they only cursed and banished him too. From then on, he belonged nowhere. Not human, not demon, and completely unable to return to his own family. For a very long time, the dragon struggled to understand why he was even born into this cruel world. So he chose to isolate himself entirely from the outside world. Hiding in the deepest shadows, he lived in total isolation until he met a tiny demon girl named Callista. The moment she saw the dragon, she immediately called him Mommy. That single word left the massive, terrifying dragon completely frozen, with no idea how to react. A second later, Callista burst into tears, ran forward and tightly wrapped her arms around the dragon's snout. Seeing the little girl sobbing so desperately, the highly flustered dragon gently tried to explain he was not her mother. And trust me, from that beautiful day on, the dragon felt he had finally found his purpose in this harsh world. Once Callista calmed down, the dragon used mind transfer magic to read her memories, only to discover she shared his tragic past of human captivity. Join me as we see how they captured Callista for horrible experiments. Just like humans, these demons experimented with dragon magic. By altering that power, they desperately searched for a way to tame them all. The moment Callista hatched, they dragged her straight to that horrific laboratory. Out of all subjects, she had the highest potential, mastering the most complex transformation spell from birth. Once they discovered this power, the demons pushed those painful tests even further. Because of that, every single second of her life became endless torture. Yet in the depths of despair, she unlocked an incredible teleportation magic all on her own. That was how her spell flung her to a distant, unknown place where she wandered weeping, until she found this dragon who, having suffered the same fate, was deeply moved by her sad story. After hesitating, he clarified he was not her mother, but asked her to call him Master from then on. She smiled happily hearing those words, and immediately started calling him Master right then. Pay close attention here, because the dragon taught her the world's harsh rules, and how to survive as one of their kind. As she grew older, her master patiently passed down every single spell he knew. During that time, they shared an incredibly happy life, full of warmth and unforgettable moments. All her past pain was slowly healing thanks to their days together. But tragedy always strikes without any warning. One day, after returning from a trip, the dragon stared at her and suddenly froze. He screamed in a rage, asking who she was and why she was there. Terrified, she had no idea what was happening. Suddenly, he unleashed a direct blast of fire, forcing her to desperately dodge his attacks over and over. In theory, dragons were incredibly long-lived creatures, but due to cruel experiments in his youth, his lifespan was drastically cut short. He could no longer live long, and his body began showing signs of constant memory loss. When clarity finally returned to his mind, he desperately began begging Callista for her forgiveness. Deeply worried, she asked what was wrong. Soon after, the dragon quietly fled, leaving her broken and weeping uncontrollably. Meanwhile, the creature sought refuge in a desolate wasteland. I know what you are thinking. He surrendered to his tragic end, remembering his life with Callista until he felt her power again a few days ago. Drawn by that force, he began his search. Upon finally seeing young Kayla, he remembered his past and chose to sacrifice his own life to protect him. In that exact moment, he understood everything. Kayla was the son of his beloved disciple. Through the boy's memories, he saw Callista's face once more. She was no longer a frightened child, but a protective mother. As he witnessed this, Wood felt the beast's emotions as his own, and tears immediately flooded his eyes. It felt as if he had awoken from an incredibly long dream, unable to recall any of its details. With a soft voice, he simply told them that the dragon had finally departed in peace. Hearing his words, Kayla assumed the dragon had truly died at the hands of that wicked mage. After swallowing the vision stone he received, Wood explained he could not expand his range right away, as he needed time to adjust. Kayla feared that without an active radar they would fall headfirst into a dangerous human trap. So he asked Slyers to pull out the map of the world. Slyers patiently explained that the zones marked in red were the Demon King's former territory, while the blue belonged to humans, placing them right on the border. After studying the map closely, Kayla pointed to a spot and said heading south seemed like the best path. Hearing this, Lynn confusedly asked why they did not head west to go deeper into demon territory. Kayla explained there must be a strong reason why his father sent him specifically to the human region of Arsal. With what they knew now, his father clearly wanted him to cross paths with Slyers, who was working undercover there. Besides, with the imminent fall of his own castle, he likely foresaw the massive invasion of the human armies. Slyers nodded in agreement, since after the defeat of the sovereign White Terran was not the only active threat. Most of the human army seized the chance to march into the forbidden territory. That was when Linlin suggested that as the Demon King's heir, he must return to rally his father's old forces. But Kayla hesitated. What do you think will happen next? Get ready for this madness, because right now, every demon is calling him a coward for fleeing. He had zero influence. Linlin turned to Slyers and asked if she wasn't also the Demon King's daughter. Slyers explained that since she spent years undercover in the human world, nobody besides the Demon King himself could prove her lineage. To make matters worse, while undercover in the Tarkin squad, she actually killed many of her own kind. Kyla said their first step was to build a dungeon base, racking up achievements slowly until the demons decided to follow him of their own free will. After hearing his plan, everyone was fully on board with Kyla's idea. As long as he kept pulling off massive feats, the demons would naturally flock back to him. Kyla would use this path to prove he was truly worthy of becoming the next Demon King. With that settled, he kept analyzing the map closely to find the perfect spot for their base. That was why they were heading south. But the biggest issue right now was that incredibly powerful humans were hunting him down, and at his current level, he stood absolutely zero chance against them. So he needed more info to assess things. Honestly, this world shared way too many similarities with the game. From the spell terms to the names of the monsters, everything felt strangely familiar to Kyla. Now pay close attention, because if this world really connected to his past life game, then he'd use his status and power as the Demon King's son to grab what he needed, blending that strength with his old gaming knowledge for a flawless survival strategy. Meanwhile, a savage battle had just erupted in a small village. The demons begged for mercy, shouting that they'd ally with the humans. But before one could even finish talking, a colossal creature swallowed him whole. And the one controlling that massive beast was D-Day, a key member of the feared Tarkin squad. The village chief ran up furious, arguing that the demons had already surrendered, and demanding to know why they kept slaughtering them. But before he could finish, Audrey raised her giant axe and sliced him in two with a single blow. Once they wiped out every last demon in the area, Kara stepped up to brief her captain. Turning around, she saw a projection of Cuddly appear, warning that a dragon had protected Kyla's group to help them escape. However, Cuddly added that she'd already released her magic butterflies to track Kyla's trail everywhere. Killian pointed out that this region wasn't far from demon territory, but it was unlikely he would return there while the war was still raging, so they would set out immediately to head toward Cuddly's current location. Days later on the run, Kyla felt a sudden chill. Slyers explained that after sprinting south for a whole week, a massive drop in temperature was totally normal. I know what you're thinking, but luckily, they hadn't run into that enemy squad again. If things stayed this peaceful, it would be awesome, at least until their dungeon was finished. But right as that thought crossed his mind, his unicorn stopped dead in its tracks. Being an elf, Wood understood the beasts and explained they refused to move, sensing they wouldn't survive the brutal freeze waiting ahead. At Kyla's signal, Wood thanked the unicorns and bid them a warm farewell. With the unicorns gone, Linlin was shivering uncontrollably from the biting cold, complaining that absolutely nobody could survive in this harsh weather. Kyla replied that was exactly why this place was perfect. Not very far from there, the returning unicorns were spotted by one of Cuddly's magical butterflies. Cuddly realized unicorns hate the cold, so why were they returning from the south, and why were there exactly 4 of them? After trekking a bit further, Kyla's group spotted a remote island right ahead of them. Kyla thought it looked perfect, so he asked Wood to check if any people or monsters were there. Wood replied her mind's eye only connected with pure nature, meaning she couldn't directly spot living things. Slyers noticed a broken-down old boat on the shore and guessed nobody had visited the island in ages. Slyers used her magic to guide the worn-out boat sailing toward the island about 200 meters off the shore. It wasn't far, but the waters were incredibly deep and the heavy waves crashed with massive force. And thanks to the terrain, if anyone tried to invade, they'd easily spot them coming from a mile away. After some quick scouting, they found a massive cave. Before heading in, Kyla had Slyers cloak the entrance with illusion magic. That way, it'd look like a normal mountain. Stick with me to find out what happens next. Come along with me for this crazy drama. Right after entering the cave, they found a fork, and Kayla told Wood to scout ahead. Wood reported a narrow passage on each side. After crossing them, both paths led to a massive room before squeezing tight once more. In the end, both paths joined in a larger space with a hidden chamber. While talking, Wood drew the layout on the ground to show his path. After thinking it over, Kayla decided to split the group in 2 to explore both paths and meet up later in the center. The moment Slyers heard that, she grabbed Kayla tightly and insisted on going with him. Seeing this, Linlin quickly grabbed Kayla, too demanding to go along no matter what. She then turned to explain that given the danger ahead, the 2 strongest fighters needed to split up. Slyers agreed with the logic and went with Wood. Entering their tunnel, Wood spotted tiny sparkles glowing in the darkness. Looking up, he discovered that the faint glow was coming from several strange stones. Slyers explained they were light stones created by merging ice magic and light magic together. Since they were still glowing today, some incredibly powerful wizard must have made them. Saying this, Sly turned to Wood and confessed she still did not trust her. Wood froze and asked what she meant. Slyers clarified she only traveled with her because Kayla made that choice, but she did not accept companions so easily. Wood sighed, telling her to treat her as a slave if she hated having her as an ally. Slyers kept a tense silence for a few minutes, then admitted she disliked Wood before walking off. Meanwhile, as Kayla approached a rock, Linlin rushed to shield him, yelling for him to be careful. Seeing Linlin so incredibly intense, Kayla wondered where this sudden burst of motivation was even coming from. Shortly after, both of them heard a sudden movement right ahead. Kayla looked down and spotted a slime. In the past, he only knew them from video games. Seeing it live, it looked way cuter than on screen. He honestly wanted to pet it gently, but before he could react, Linlin lunged forward, beating the slime to a pulp and completely obliterating it. After taking down the creature, Linlin stared at him with sparkling eyes. Kayla figured she was waiting for a compliment, so to make her happy, he gritted his teeth and enthusiastically praised her, calling her amazing. Now pay attention here, because right as she giggled, they felt the entire ground start shaking violently. Right after that, nearby boulders suddenly snapped together, bringing a gigantic stone golem to life. Sensing the danger, Kayla ordered her to fall back immediately. However, Linlin did not budge. Instead, she took a firm step forward to protect Kayla with her life. She charged in with fury, but the golem swatted her away, sending her crashing into the wall, coughing up blood. In desperation, Kayla screamed at her to run, knowing it was impossible to beat this massive beast without a weapon. But pulling herself up in pain, Linlin focused magic into her hand and attacked again. Sadly, the result was exactly the same. She did not even scratch the monster, ending up slammed hard against the ground once again. Enduring the agonizing pain, Linlin regained her balance and stood defiantly before the beast once more. Kayla begged her to stop. But do you think she would quit? Never not, when it meant losing her right to protect him. Gritting her teeth hard, Linlin's mind drifted back into the painful memories of her past. She perfectly remembered her first day stepping inside the Demon King's imposing castle. Back then, little Kayla ran crying to his father, begging to be friends with Linlin. The Demon King thought it was a joke. A servant was just a servant. Thus, he forced Kayla to seal a strict master-servant contract. In those days, Kayla was far too weak and cowardly to ever dare defy his father's absolute orders. So in the end, he had no choice but to activate the painful pact on poor Linlin. Yet she thanked him deeply for wanting to be her friend instead of her master. It made her incredibly happy. For once, she felt valued as a real human being. From that moment on, she swore to give her absolute best. She secretly swore she would help Kayla rise up to become the next great Demon King. Over time, she realized he was a crying coward, constantly tormented to near death by his ruthless siblings. If he died, she'd be executed too. To toughen him up, she grew cold. Stick with me to see how this unfolds. Even so, you and I can see Cain never lost his cowardly attitude. Because of Kayla, the others bullied and shunned Linlin, forcing her to eat nothing but leftover scraps. Some even threw burning magma at her, forcing her to sleep in filthy stables or pigsties. Yet the other servants still came back to torment her day after day. They took it out on Linlin just because the masters looked at her. Every single day for Linlin was pure hell. Maybe that is when she started hating Kayla for that contract. If Kayla died, she would die right alongside him. Because of that, she figured it was better if they both died together. But when the dagger sliced Kayla's artery, her insane regeneration healed her instantly. That discovery completely broke Linlin inside. Now she could not even choose to end her own life. Meanwhile, the original Kayla could only weep, begging for forgiveness over and over again. But one day, Linlin felt Kayla completely change all of a sudden. Pay close attention here. He did not just face his siblings. He unleashed brutal power that revived Linlin's heart. In Kayla, she saw the potential of a future Demon King. Yet throughout this journey, she had barely helped him. Feeling like useless dead weight, she refused to hold Kayla back. With that thought, Linlin charged headfirst at the golem, burying both hands deep into its neck. Focusing all her magic into her hands and unleashing her strength, she ripped the creature's head off in one clean pull. Seeing her land, Kayla was left utterly speechless. He never imagined she possessed such brutal combat strength. Linlin stood up, looking at him with teary eyes, begging him not to abandon her. Just as he stepped closer to comfort her, the headless golem began to move again. Hearing the noise behind her, Linlin panicked. She tried to dodge, but her body had absolutely no energy left. In that critical split second, Kayla gathered magic in his fist, slamming a direct palm strike into the monster. Taking that massive hit, the creature stumbled back a few steps and collapsed onto the ground. Kayla immediately rushed over to hold Lin's weak body, asking if she was completely stupid. How could he ever abandon a servant like her? Linlin froze for a moment, softly calling him master. I know what you're thinking. And yes, Kayla warned her he'd never let her escape. From now on, she stays by his side. Hearing this, Linlin immediately began to sob. Then she threw herself into his arms, weeping loudly. Seeing the memories between the original Kayla and her, he felt her emotions were completely real. For the sake of their future, Kayla had to make Linlin his strongest servant. Meanwhile, in the other passage, Slayers discovered a massive hidden treasure pile. Without a second thought, she grabbed a necklace, put it on, and asked Wood how she looked. Wood just nodded blankly. Slyers pouted at that. Wood was way too cold. If Linlin were here, she would be showering her with endless praise. Mulling over it, she walked a bit further and spotted several shiny objects scattered across the ground. She rushed over to inspect them, realizing they were incredibly precious rare gems. Wood called out her name from behind, but Slyers jumped up quickly, snapping that she wouldn't share a single piece. Wood asked if she genuinely had no clue what was happening, or was just playing dumb. Slyers was about to snap back when she suddenly felt the bracelet on her wrist rapidly tightening. The necklace around her neck began squeezing tight too. Sensing the danger, Slyers cursed under her breath. Turning around, she saw a colossal beast slowly emerge from the shadows. Slyers admitted she already felt something was off with those jewels, but she never expected a hidden treasure spider to be lurking there. She immediately screamed at Wood, demanding why she didn't stop her if she already knew. Wood calmly replied she assumed Slyers had some clever trick ready, so she simply chose to watch in silence. With that, Wood summoned vines to block the spider's attack. Slyers muttered to herself that under normal conditions, this bug would be absolute fodder for her. But this time she messed up. With her hands completely bound, she couldn't even draw her magic staff. With no other choices, she had to pin all her hopes on Wood. Thinking fast, Slyers yelled that she only let herself get caught to test her. With Slyers trapped, what do you think Wood will do? She just tells her to give everything to pass. Wood listened to her, stepped forward, and slowly unsheathed her dagger. All right, you and I are jumping right into this crazy fight. Wood strikes the bracelet hard, but Slyers warns her that normal force can't break items made by the treasure spider. Stay with me to see how they desperately search for another option. Suddenly, the treasure spider opens its jaws and spits out nasty green venom. Without hesitating, Wood grabs Slyers and pulls back as fast as possible. Slyers yells that it is concentrated acid capable of melting them in a single second. Wood dodges the blast while asking what to do, but trips on a rock, launching Slyers. Seizing the moment, the beast fires a lightning-fast web, pinning Slyers to the wall before she even realizes what happened. In the blink of an eye, the monster looms over her, striking with a massive front claw. Luckily, Wood dives right in, using her own body as a shield to save Slyers. She immediately draws her dagger and slices right through the spider's leg in one blow. With its legs severed, the beast screeches in agony and backs away in a panic. Gritting her teeth, Wood seizes the moment and pulls the sharp claw out of her flesh. Then she spins around and slams that claw straight into Slyers' bracelet, completely shattering the supposedly indestructible object. Watch closely because the spider recovers instantly and launches a brutal counterattack right at Wood. It's too fast to dodge, forcing her to block the impact head-on. Yet she stands firm, protecting Slyers without giving up an inch. With her hands free, Slyers wastes no time summoning her magical staff. With a dark glare, she aims at the spider, charging her mana, before firing a beam of purple light. The moment the light touches the beast, intense flames completely consume its entire body. Its body is reduced to ash. But then Wood loses all her strength and collapses wounded onto the floor. Slyers asks how she could possibly know that the spider's claw would shatter the magic bracelet. Wood weakly explains she just assumed the monster's own body would be immune to its magic. Slyers replies that if she had failed, it would have cost her life right then and there. Wood looks up, saying she doesn't care about dying. That devotion leaves Slyers frozen. And let's face it, that moment hits differently. Suddenly, memories of her brutal training days with the Tarkin squad flash back to her. Back then, even after being run through by a sword, she grabbed the bare blade and smiled defiantly at her foe. Then with one clean, brutal swing, she slices his head right off. It was that absolute lack of fear that caught her mentor's eye in the first place. Her master warned her that if the sword had pierced her heart, she would have died instantly. She replied that she didn't care because he was the one who ordered her to risk everything. Hearing that, her master immediately approved. And now Slyers sees her own past self reflected in Wood. So mimicking her old mentor, she softly tells Wood that she has officially passed the test. From now on, she is a true partner, but warns her to be careful. Wood nods solemnly, promising to remember. Shortly after, Kayla's group and Slyers finally reunite after their intense separate battles. Kayla explains they fought a giant golem, while Slyers reveals the treasure spider, noting that having both beasts in one dungeon makes absolutely no sense. Looking around carefully, Kayla notices the structure resembles the Demon King's castle mixed with strangely familiar human architecture. But what catches his attention the most is the massive statue sitting in the center. The bizarre chest resting beneath it looks completely out of place and highly suspicious. Healing herself. Linlin eagerly shouts that it looks like a treasure chest, making Slyers grin and praise her sharp eyes. And she rushes straight for the chest without looking back. Suddenly, the statue's eyes glow with a golden light. An alarmed Kayla draws his bow, shouting at her to stop. Realizing it is too late to pull her back, he lets loose an arrow without hesitation. Simultaneously, the ancient statue fires 2 powerful laser beams straight from its eyes. Fortunately, Kayla's magic arrow intercepts the attack. Wood and Linlin scream in panic, wondering if this is another trap. Kayla curses, but before you and I can even breathe, the statue fires 2 more brutal laser beams. Get ready because Slyers just dodged and summoned her staff. Linlin and Wood tried to stand up and help, but Kayla shouted at them to stay right where they were. They still hadn't recovered and would only get in the way. Hearing that Wood obeyed, sat back down, and kept healing. Linlin turned around and snapped at him, demanding to know if he really wasn't going to help. Wood replied that Slyers ordered him not to die easily, so he'd listen to Kayla and focus on healing. Linlin realized she couldn't argue, leaving her with no choice but to sit down and rest. Meanwhile, after firing a rapid stream of magic arrows, Kayla yelled at Slyers to strike the statue's body while he distracted it. The moment Kayla finished speaking, arrows flew toward the statue, but its barrier completely blocked every single one. Slyers swung her staff, launching fireballs, but the statue blocked the magic and fired laser beams from its eyes again. Slyers cried out in alarm that this statue was casting defense and attack magic simultaneously. Kayla frowned, insisting there was no way a simple statue could cast so many spells at once. Slyers kept attacking while analyzing the situation. There were only 2 possible options. Either a powerful wizard stored the spells inside beforehand, or something within the statue was actively casting them. Hearing this, Kayla turned to Wood. Pay close attention here. He ordered him to scan the statue's interior. Wood tapped into the power of nature to search, confirming to Kayla that it was empty. Kayla realized right then that they were dealing with a second option Slyers suggested. As the lasers charged again, Slyers summoned a shield and told Kayla to destroy it with everything. Kayla snapped back in frustration. If Slyers' magic couldn't crack it, how was he supposed to? Suddenly, as they spoke, several stone figures jumped straight down from the dungeon walls. A massive treasure spider materialized right before Slyers. Instantly, she raised her staff, releasing purple flames. But when the fire hit the spider, it didn't leave even a single scratch. Seeing her magic fail, Slyers realized she was facing the mother of all treasure spiders. Taking advantage of her distraction, the beast launched a brutal strike with its sharp front claws. As she dodged, Slyers knew she could easily wipe these things out in an open field. Kayla was struggling, too cornered by gargoyles. Unleashing the Demon King's power would end this instantly. But if he released that energy, the chasing Tarkin squad would pinpoint their exact location. Trapped in this dilemma, Kayla stared intensely at the main statue. Let's look closely at this. The statue stopped attacking when monsters appeared, as if controlling them drained its power. Plus, those beasts emerged right when Slyers ordered Kayla to attack with everything he had. In other words, the statue sensed the threat in Slyers' warning and summoned these guardians. Kayla told Slyers to buy him some time while he targeted the statue, and though confused, she never stopped casting. She threw up a massive wall of fire that blocked the advancing gargoyles. Seizing the opening, Kayla charged, guessing that without its offenses, the statue's shield was also down. Kayla threw a punch, and his fist slammed into the base with such insane force, it shattered completely. He broke straight through the rock, falling inside, yet the gargoyles didn't even try to stop him. They kept pressure on Slyers, but nearby, the queen spider turned and bolted straight toward the statue. Seeing this, Wood warned everyone that the giant spider was the only one that could squeeze inside. Right then, 2 stone figures spotted them and began slowly closing in on their position. Both were still incredibly weak and injured, but luckily Slyers reacted fast with her magic shield. The stone fist slammed into her barrier with an absolutely deafening crash. Slyers urged them to stay calm, knowing their only hope now was to trust Kayla completely. Meanwhile, Kayla looked up inside the statue and spotted a mysterious glowing light that seemed to be its core. He drew his bow, but a terrifying hiss cut him off. You and I definitely cannot miss what comes next. Come along with me and watch as Kayla gets completely trapped by the treasure spider's deadly silk. Since this spider was pretty small, it only needed to widen the entrance a bit to slip into the statue after him. Outside, taking one brutal hit after another, Slayers screamed in panic that they were at their absolute limit while Kayla remained hopelessly pinned down. To make matters worse, the beast raised its front claw, ready to end him right there. Just as Kayla prepared to unleash the Demon King's power, the dark voice inside his mind started mocking him. With a sudden angry shout, Kayla was pulled right back into his soul space. Seeing him, the shadow pointed an angry finger demanding why he was letting some pathetic bug beat him down. Kayla roared right back, yelling at the entity for only showing up now when he was almost dead. Calling him an idiot? The shadow asked why he wasn't using his taming power, since even at his current weak level, dominating a low-class beast was easy. He froze completely, asking if this meant the servant contract he had made with Linlin when they were just kids. The shadow barked back a flat no, and after another harsh insult, Kayla snapped in absolute fury. Sighing deeply, the entity reminded him that the blood of the legendary Demon Kings flowed directly through his veins. Pay close attention here, because that legendary demon-ruling power will finally awaken if his desire is strong enough. Totally confused, Kayla asked what he was supposed to do. You must crush your enemies with pure will and unleash the deep greed etched into your bloodline. Hearing those words, a spark clicked, and Kayla finally understood his true path. If he truly was the Demon King, then every beast before him was his to command. Only he could lead them. With that realization, he felt an ancient, deep-rooted seal inside his body slowly starting to shatter. Snapping back to reality, a sharp purple glow flared in his left eye, freezing the treasure spider right in its tracks. Suddenly, the glowing blue crystal resting on its head began turning a deep purple. I am Kayla Carlton, the rightful heir to the Demon King, and you will obey me. With a silent roar, he declared that from this very moment, the beast was entirely his. And the second he claimed ownership, the spider's glowing crystal turned completely purple, and its sharp, deadly claw froze mid-strike inches from his face. Right then, a game-like taming interface popped up, displaying the subdued treasure spider in the very first slot. You and I both recognize that classic look. It was literally a gaming inventory screen. He could now feel with absolute certainty that the giant beast would blindly obey his every command. It was his. Just as Slayer's protective barrier was about to shatter, Kayla ordered his new pet to sprint up the massive statue. Knowing they were out of time, Kayla leapt straight toward the floating glowing core of blue energy and unleashed his powerful demon taming skill on it. Instantly, the brilliant crystal core began shifting, turning from bright blue into a deep purple. Just like the spider, it fell under his command, forcing all the raging golems outside to freeze completely. Behind her fading barrier, Linlin looked around in total confusion, having no idea what just happened. Wood was the first to spot Kayla and immediately yelled out to get everyone's attention. They all looked up and stood shocked, watching young Kayla riding the giant beast while casually holding a purple slime. As it turned out, the dangerous dungeon boss was actually just a cute slime, modified by an incredibly powerful mage. Plus, this was the first time Kayla had touched a real slime since arriving in this world. Its squishy, jelly-like texture was exactly how he had always pictured it. Hearing Kayla's explanation, Sly admitted she'd never heard of such a crazy skill, likely because she lacked the pure Demon King bloodline. Linlin was also completely shocked by this incredible power. Kayla happily joked that, with the boss, Tame building their own custom dungeon would be a piece of cake. He quickly named his new pet, while Slayers pouted beside him, complaining that she wanted mind control powers too. They were both descendants of the same fearsome ruler, so she didn't get why only Kayla had the skill. Still, she felt a bit uneasy. If a legendary mage had originally created this slime, where did they go? Linlan suggested they left long ago, but you and I know this massive mystery is far from solved. Come along with me to see if those mages actually fell fighting humans. While listening to them talk, Kayla stared thoughtfully at the stone, desperate to find out who the mysterious shadow living inside his mind really was. If it hadn't saved him those few times, he would have died a long time ago. He was dying to contact this entity again, but looking back at their past 2 brief encounters, he couldn't find a single clear clue on how to make it happen. So he decided to put that mystery aside for now His most urgent mission right now was building a dungeon that truly belonged to him. After making Stone submit, Kayla took full command of all the demonic monsters under his rule. To keep the Terran squad from discovering them, Kayla set up outposts all over the island and hid tons of tiny spiders right near the entrance. He hid gargoyles in the corridors, leaving the giant golems and the treasure spiders safely inside the main hall for the time being. With everything set up, Kayla walked over to the massive chest resting beneath the statue. Opening it, he pulled out a pair of daggers and handed them straight to Linlin. Slyers explained that these weapons would concentrate and heavily amplify her demonic power. Pay close attention here, because if she masters these daggers, her strength will reach an insane level, without even needing to coat her hands in demonic energy. Upon hearing this, Linlin swore to train hard to protect Kayla from the humans, while Wood pulled a shield out of the old chest. She looked at it, noting that it just seemed like an old wooden shield, but Wood insisted the surface was damp, feeling the power of nature within. Kayla let him keep it, and then Slyers pulled out a magic book. When it was Kayla's turn to choose, Slyers pointed to a nearby sword, urging him to take it, since it overflowed with incredible magic. Kayla glanced sideways at that sword. However, his eyes were immediately drawn to another sword, featuring a distinct purple hilt. A second later, he picked it up, claiming it. Slyers, deeply confused, asked why he chose it when it seemed like the weakest weapon there. What nobody realized was that Kayla picked it because it looked exactly like the weapon he used to wield in a video game. Admit it. You and I would both feel nostalgic reuniting with an old gaming companion after all this time. With their weapons ready, Kayla began drawing up the blueprints to renovate the dungeon. But of course, this island was completely barren, leaving them with very few materials. Fortunately, they gathered basic elements like dirt, stone, and water, using Wood's architectural skills for the design and Slyer's magic to build. So they blended the underground demon castle style with Arsal City to slowly raise this new fortress. Conditions were harsh, but this was the first dungeon Kayla built with his own hands, perhaps his last safe haven. Once the main hall was finished, Kayla brought Stone out and asked if he liked his brand new home. Seeing Stone jump around happily, Kayla smiled with relief. Meanwhile, a magical blue butterfly silently hovered over the island, while back in Arsal, mages rushed to rebuild the ruined city. Inside a meeting hall, the city's ruler thanked Hayden for bringing in reinforcements. But Hayden snapped that it was no time for pleasantries, since nobody expected Arsal, a direct state of Tyria, to fall so low. The ruler quickly apologized, explaining that everyone had been distracted by the celebrations that day. Before he could finish, a furious Hayden cut him off, reminding him that Arsal was famous for its magic. Even so, a mere traitor and the Demon King's weakest son had managed to completely humiliate them. Then, Hayden ordered them to immediately gather their strongest elemental mages to grant them Ruya upgrade stones, promising he would personally train them. The stuttering ruler mentioned he had heard that White Terran was already involved in this matter. So why did the mages of Arsal need to get involved too? Hayden coldly replied that not even White Terran knew the exact location of the target group. If their own mages tracked and eliminated them, first, wouldn't that restore their city's ruined reputation? Growing even more nervous, the old man stammered that those upgrade stones carried fatal side effects. Hayden smirked maliciously, mocking the old man for worrying about such trivial things in the middle of a crisis. And that is where we leave it, watching this guy unleash his power without caring about innocent lives. Let's jump into this tense opening where Hayden coldly reminds the old man who is boss and who put him in power in Arsal. And just as easily as Hayden raised him up, he could make him vanish without a single trace. Hayden needed an excuse to keep the king's backing, so the old man had to shut up and summon those elemental mages immediately. After giving his orders, Hayden walked all alone through Arsal's Grand Plaza. He knew that if the White Tarkin found Kayla's group first, he would likely slaughter them on the spot. This time he had to beat the White Tarkin to them. Right then, a man cloaked in black approached and called his name. He asked if he was searching for Kayla, calmly promising he could help locate her before Hayden could even say a word. Meanwhile, on the island, the others managed to find a chair for Kayla. Kayla thought it looked way too luxurious, almost as if it belonged to some kind of ultimate demon king. Linlin piped up that Kyla would become the demon king one day, so he deserved a throne worthy of his greatness. Sly pointed out they only had fish, but as the demon king's heir, Kayla needed a much more balanced diet. Hearing that, Lulin slammed the table and jumped up, demanding that Kayla get some real food right this instant. She volunteered to go hunt in a more secluded area nearby. Now pay close attention here, because Kylo immediately shuts that down. The White Terran would easily track them down there. Despite his firm warning after days of eating nothing but fish, Kayla was suffering and desperately craved a juicy piece of meat. Right then, Wood stood up and suggested they try hunting for some wild animals nearby. Slyers was totally confused, asking how they could find land animals when they were surrounded by endless water. Wood led everyone to an open clearing and immediately pulled out his shield. He explained to Kayla that the shield possessed life force and could sync with her elven energy, which she understood instantly. She could use the shield to grow roots underground and detect tunneling creatures. It was just like fishing for this to work. The roots had to advance slowly and silently. 2 hours passed with zero luck. Then 4 hours went by, and they still had absolutely nothing to eat. By the 6-hour mark, Linlin couldn't take it anymore and asked Wood if this trick actually worked. Suddenly Wood felt a tremor and his eyes widened. Gripping the shield with both hands, he pulled with all his might. Suddenly a massive mole-like beast was yanked right out of the dirt. Slyers was amazed to see the giant mole and praised Wood, causing his cheeks to flush red from the rare compliment. But Kayla just stared at the huge beast, wondering if it was actually edible. You saw that right? Linlin completely panics when she sees Wood catch something. Refusing to lose to the newcomer, Linlin tossed the mole onto her back and promised to cook a delicious feast. After choking down fish for days, they finally had some actual meat to look forward to. But after tying the mole up, Linlin struggled because its hide was too thick for her claws to pierce. Even though she wanted to go back and ask Wood for help, she stopped dead in her tracks. Linlin worried that if she couldn't handle such a simple task, Kylo would be deeply disappointed in her. So she decided to pull out the twin daggers she had recently received. Following Slyer's instructions, Linlin began to channel her magic directly into the blades. Suddenly the daggers floated out of control and began to greedily drain all of Linlin's mana. She tried to fling them away, but was horrified to find them completely fused to her hands. Linlin knew she would be sucked dry if this kept up. Meanwhile, Sly relaxed on the couch reading the magic tome. It was pretty obvious that this magic book had been created right inside the dungeon. It held priceless information about the dungeon, along with several basic spells tied to its unique properties. Even though most of them were just low-level spells, Slayers noticed unfamiliar terms and couldn't figure out the actual strength of the book's creator. Halfway through, she stumbled upon something horrifying. Right then, Linlin's scream echoed loudly from the kitchen. Wood went to stand up, but Sly stopped her, telling her to leave her alone. Wood reminded her that Linlan screamed. Sly says she is just cooking, leaving us in suspense. Let's dive in and watch how Linlin completely drained of magic fights with everything she has to stay on her feet. She kept telling herself she had to control these daggers. Back at the castle when the real Kayla took lessons, she would always watch from the shadows. Back then, wanting nothing more than to support Kayla, she memorized every single lesson in detail. Surely the secret to mastering these daggers was hidden somewhere in her mind. After desperately trying to remember, she recalled her master's words. Magical weapons were far superior to ordinary ones. But if the wielder had no control, they were completely and utterly useless. Basically, to wield a magic weapon, you had to understand its essence. If you did not want your own power to consume you, you had to mold it exactly as desired. In battle, most people only release a tiny fraction of their magical energy. But with absolute intense concentration, they could pull off a genuine miracle. Keeping that in mind, Linlin focused her will to sync her magic with the dagger's true nature. She controlled her releasing power, slowly shaping it into the sharp form of the metal blades. After several tries, she was amazed to see her magic bond with the daggers, though this level still was not enough. So she began to ramp up her magical flow. Now watch closely here at the absolute limit of her strength. She screams and plunges her weapon into the mole. The creature's hide, which was hard as steel just a moment ago, was pierced as easily as plain paper. Seeing that she succeeded, Linlin froze for a second, realizing the daggers were no longer draining her vital energy. As she pulled her weapon from the mole, she saw the absorbed magic had turned into a fierce cutting aura. She felt like the weapons had finally become one with her. Outside, Kayla realized that Linlin had been shut in the kitchen for far too long. Worried that something was wrong, he headed over. But right then, she walked out, carrying a plate of meat. The moment he saw her, Kayla immediately asked what that loud scream from earlier was all about. A cold sweat broke out on Linlin, not wanting Kayla to know how embarrassing it actually was. So she lied and said nothing happened. I know what you're thinking. And yeah, even Slyers was completely shocked that Linlin pulled this off 10 times faster than expected. Linlin completely froze and asked what she meant by that. Slyers held up her magic book, explaining that it contained records about this specific kind of mole. The beast's hide was incredibly tough. According to the book, it was almost invincible underground, and only someone wielding a powerful sword aura could cut it. Surprised, Linlin admitted the skin felt like pure steel. Wood also walked over to praise her, saying she was truly incredible. Kayla gently stroked her cheek, praising her for the hard work, and promising he would fully enjoy the meal. Those sweet words made her blush intensely. She felt like she finally gained his approval, secretly vowing to grow stronger so she could support him until he became the true Demon King. Seeing her growth, Slyers smiled with relief, suddenly remembering the battle with the Earth Demons and how they struggled to clear this dungeon. Back then, she had barely been of any help, and having her wide-range magic blocked by the terrain was no excuse. She needed a powerful spell suited for any situation. Over the following days, Slyers completely isolated herself to desperately study new spells. She knew very well that the Demon King had sent Kayla to Arsel so she could back him up. But if White Tarkin discovered them now with their current strength, she would struggle immensely just to protect Kayla. Therefore, she had to advance to become a fourth circle mage. After all, Cuddly, her former pursuer, surely belonged to the sixth circle by now. Thinking about this, Slyers pulled out the earth mineral that demons consumed to boost their power at the cost of their lifespan, just to get powerful fast and fulfill the mission. From her, King Slyers decided to swallow it without hesitation. But right then, her magic book began to emit an incredibly bright golden glow. Sensing something strange, Slyers turned around, her eyes widening as the book started turning its own pages. Before she could even react, that golden light began resonating with the magical flow of the entire room. 2.5 seconds later, glowing letters appear, leaving you and I completely hanging. Stick with me here because Slyers just realized those golden characters were the exact ones she could never decipher. Instantly, a massive pillar of light erupted from the letters and in a flash shot straight into her abdomen. At that distance, dodging was impossible. The moment the golden flash struck her, her mind plunged into an endless void. Slyers looked around completely dazed and having no clue where she was. A witch clad in black appeared behind her, revealing she carried the Demon King's power and had finally returned after reincarnating. She assumed the book reacted because she inherited a fraction of her father, the Demon King's magical energy. So she asked who this woman was, and if she had served the former monarch of Hell. The witch denied it, leaving her to wonder why the grimoire reacted to such dark, ominous energy. The answer chilled her to the bone. This sorceress had once served Tolk, the sole god of this world. She gasped in utter disbelief, asking if Tolk was actually the previous Demon King himself. He was, after all, the strongest being on the continent. Pay close attention, because the witch told a stunned Slyers this was destiny. She had waited countless years for her in darkness. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Slyers asked if this dungeon was built by Tolk himself. The woman confessed they traveled the world, leaving dungeons behind, so future chosen ones could reach true enlightenment. Hearing that, it became crystal clear that her arrival in this mysterious place was no mere coincidence. Right away, she asked her to join their journey and lend them her immense strength. She explained the current Demon King had already fallen in battle, but the witch admitted she wasn't actually alive. She was merely a magical projection triggered under specific conditions, bound to serve only the one who awakened her. Without hesitation, Slyers asked how to get stronger. She desperately needed power to protect Kayla, the descendant of Tolk. The witch absolutely loved her directness, and honestly, so do I. While she could guide her, a mage seeking to break her limits ultimately had to rely on her own strength. The method required letting the agony of death tear through her body. Only by enduring it would her power rebuild. Hearing this, Slyers fell to her knees, begging for that very opportunity. The sorceress warned that once it started, the pain would feel like 14 years of torture, and failure meant certain death. At the mere mention of death, her face tensed up completely. But she instantly thought of Kayla and the old monarch shouting that if she couldn't protect the heir, her life had no meaning. With absolute resolve, she demanded they begin. The witch raised her hand, forming a magic circle, while whispering cold approval. She had felt Sly's unbreakable will. Now she would destroy every spell Slyers knew to rebuild her magical foundation from scratch, with pure energy. The moment she finished speaking, an agonizing, tear-inducing pain coursed through every single part of her body. It was a level of torture and sheer terror she had never known. Yet she forced herself to stay conscious. Only when Slyers began absorbing that raw agony did the sorceress initiate the real process. And believe me, a pain far more devastating than before slammed into her at that very moment.